All right. Welcome, everyone, to the FATED Connections Path of Exile Community Podcast, episode 67. Scourge League has been going on for roughly a month, almost a month, and we've been able to collect a lot of data, have our experiences, bring our builds to the point where we feel comfortable with it, and maybe even max out the Crucible and experiment plentifully with the different mechanics. And today, BalorMage and I are joined by the big YouTubers, Sirgog and Tenkiei, who are very analytically minded. Both of them, we had a lot of interesting discussions come to fruition in the podcast group that we had open in Discord. And I'm very happy to welcome you both on the podcast. We'll start with Sirgog. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to give us a quick introduction, who you are and what do you know for? Where do you come from? How do you like playing PoE? How do you like your ARPGs? Well done, or?
Alrighty, well, just on that, I started playing Path of Exile very casually back in 2013. Took me something like 6 leagues to get to the point that I could get to maps, and another 2 until I could kill normal maps 3. Then I started around maybe 3.1 era, becoming more of a power gamer. Started hitting 36 challenges in every league except the ones I don't like. And these days, depending on my feel for the league, sometimes I'll play something that's very meta and go for a lot of in-game achievements, try and sort of be one of the top 0.1% or so. And other leagues, I'll be like, take a more relaxed approach and go, you know what, I'm just going to do something a bit goofy and make a silly build and then force it to 36 challenges somehow. Last couple of leagues, I've generally played weaker stuff. I just found it's been a bit more fun doing that. I'm also the person responsible for a couple of the divination cards that you probably never get. Price of Loyalty, Price of Protection, which is Price of Protection hasn't aged well, and Price of Prescience.
I don't remember what any of those cards are.
One's the most recent one is the Vaal Temple 100% Illyrius map that was added last league.
Oh, yep.
Price of Protection is the 4 Watchstone Chateau map, no?
Yeah, that hasn't aged well. That was done back when Tier 16 maps were very rare, and originally it was an Elder Chateau map. But then about the time it was added to the game, the intention was, here's a bad tile set, do something with it because it's too precious not to run. And then the game sort of started shifting towards maps, like top-tier maps are no longer treasure. They're now just, like a low-end Scarab. They're a consumable you use quickly. So that card didn't age well, although it drops a lot now. It drops a lot from invasion bosses in Lyra Arthane, I think it is now, that's got the invasion bosses in it.
Awesome. That's great. Wait, did I hear my echo somewhere? Testing? No.
I can hear you medium volume and clear.
All right. No, I just heard I said one sentence and I heard a little bit, so that I want to just knock that out as a possibility very early on instead of noticing it like an hour later into the podcast again. But yeah, thanks for giving a little bit of background. Tenkiei, you've been here a couple of times, but maybe a quick word of introduction for the people who don't know you yet.
So I'm 10. I like to do a lot of crafting stuff in Path of Exile. Crafting has always been the thing that attracted me to the game over others. Builds, they're really cool. But at the end of the day, other games have cool builds. No game has anything like Path of Exile's crafting system. It is the most complicated and in-depth, and the way in which it interacts with the economy is great. I play softcore trade. I play a lot of softcore trade because I like trading. I like doing things like buying 1,000 fossils and throwing them at shields and seeing how much profit that turns into. A lot, by the way. I make content on YouTube. I sometimes do build stuff. I sometimes talk about other games. And this league, I've also been doing quite a bit of talking about why the league is broken and what should probably be fixed long term, although I don't really think this is necessarily going core.
Yeah. I'm sure we're going to get into that. I'm very, very interested in hearing more details about that. I know we had some on and off discussions about various broken elements of the game. Before we go into that, though, Balor, do you want to quickly do an introduction? Do you want to say something about where your mental stance at the moment? What have you been up to?
I mean, about the league, because I think this league is fantastic. I think the only reason people are unhappy is because they sold us a league they didn't give us. But what they actually gave us is really good. So I'm okay to adjust to that. I'm having a lot of fun. I've made way more builds this league by this point than any other league so far, I think. Like, I've re-rolled more.
Already?
I keep getting characters to like the early 90s and then being like, this was really fun, but I've got this other idea. and I wanna run it. And then I'm like, okay, well now the next idea though. Because they changed too much on me. And now I need to play everything again.
I'm very similar, but completely different result. Like, I'm also very happy that everything got changed, and I've played the game with a newfound enthusiasm for build making, as there's a lot of things that haven't been fully figured out, at least not by me. I'm sure other people are way ahead since I went away for like a week or two in between the first month. But unlike in other leagues where usually, if you guys don't know me, I'm the Catmaster. I play hardcore solo self-found, even though I probably shouldn't, because I don't really excel at the game that much. I mean, I'm pretty decent with some things, but I die way too much, and then I re-roll a lot. So at this point in the league, I probably normally would have made like 5 or 6 builds, just by nature of like dying in HC and then having to re-roll something different because SSF, because you don't have the same gear available. You got other good stuff in your stash that you need to put to use. But this time around, I decided to start in softcore trade and see how far I can get on one single build, even though it's not the most perfect build approach. So I decided to go Armor Brand Ignite and made a bunch of videos about that. And obviously, softcore trade is a lot more hospitable to suboptimal builds and to suboptimal playstyles. So I've been getting a lot of practice. I'm still looking forward to doing some of the endgame stuff before I move on. And honestly, I've probably never been able to stick with a single build for as long into the league, just because of the HC stuff normally. Looking forward to going back to HC, but for now, enjoying softcore. And yeah, I'm actually curious about what Balor said. I think that's also a good starting point. I really like the league myself, but would you quickly care to elaborate what you meant with they sold us a different league than the one that we got? What do you think we were advertised? What's the league that you think we didn't get that we were promised, and the league that we now have?
So I think even before they buffed it, that this was the most rewarding league that we've ever had. Before they buffed it, it was already the most rewarding league we've ever had. But all the rewards in this league come from Scourge maps. Almost all of them. We have been given a mapping league. But and it's fantastic, super rewarding. It's even more ridiculous now that it's like 4 times as good as it was. But it was already, before they buffed it, the most rewarding league in the world. But that's not what we were sold. Through all the promotional material, through all the hype, through all the everything, we were sold items. We were all hyped for items. We were all excited for items. Crangled gear is trash. The chances of getting anything and crangling it yourself into something remotely useful is slim to none. The chances of ruining your gear when you crangle it is super high. No one in their right mind is crangling anything super expensive. We were sold an item league. Yeah. I'm not saying no one's doing it.
Oh, I know.
But the people who are doing it, are you okay? Like, those are some big risks you're taking. So the point is, we were sold items and we were given none. That crangled system is actual trash. The only thing it's good for is free 6 links. And yes, there's some super powerful stuff that can come out of that, but it's literally the chances of you crafting or making a really good item and then crangling it into having something really good is like mirror rarity. Like, you're not getting that yourself, probably. Someone might, but you're probably not. Right? Like, they'll exist. They'll be on trade. Like, you'll be able to buy one, but the chances of crangling something yourself without ruining it and while getting a huge upside, slim to none. And that's what we were sold. We were sold an item league. So
it depends, because just quick one interjection before I throw over the microphone. I think it depends largely on what you're crangling, because some items you don't want to corrupt. The ones that you want to corrupt, it's really hard because you first need to hit a good double implicit corrupt and then crangle it, because after you crangle a good Scourge implicit pair, you can't double corrupt it anymore. So it's kind of bad. But what I've been doing is I use the Martyr of Innocence staff in my build, and I've been doing a couple of those because you don't want to corrupt that one for the implicit, because then you lose the implicit 18% attack block. And I've gotten one, the best one I had was at tier 2, was like 50+% increased lightning damage and minus lightning resist. If that would have been fire, it would have been golden. I also had one with fire penetration, but since I'm ignite, penetration doesn't matter. But yeah, Sirgog, you had something on the tip of your tongue and I cut you off.
Yeah, so like I guess my question is, what do you think of the double corruption chamber? Because Elva's Corruption Chamber is 50% outright wreck the item, either destroying it or to or to turn it into a 4-mod influenced rare that's going to have bad stats. 25% chance to bleach the sockets, which is a pretty minimal effect, especially now that it's so much easier to change socket colors. And then a 25% chance to give you some Val implicits, but often, depending on the item that you're crangling, sometimes there'll be 30% of them will be good ones. Other times there's only 15%. And yet, like, people, you go back a few leagues when Rigwold's Quills was meta, people would slam quills after quills into the corruption chamber. This was chasing 2 mods that were each 1 in 146 to get. And yet they would still do it.
So the reason that this was good, though, so there are outcomes that good from Scourge as well. Right? Like, there are disgustingly good outcomes. There's keystones and stuff that would change my entire build. Like, getting a Shavron's Wrapping that has Pain Attunement on it could change your entire build, right?
Yeah.
Like that the whole thing, everything good. So there are still good outcomes that are as good as the Elva Temple outcomes. The difference is the chance of getting a useful keystone at all on your item that you Scourge is something like 1 in 2, I think it was 1 in 20-something thousand if you want to have no downside as well that would ruin the build. Like, no, like, not this or not that or minus global, or it might have been 2,000. It might have been like 1 in 2,000 of hitting the right keystone.
That sounds more like
not a downside.
That sounds like you're looking at something a little too specific for the example.
Yeah, okay, but we were looking for 2 very specific things on a Rigwold's quill, right? Or on the quiver for the
But if
Alva
you're both
Temple.
1 in 47, then the odds are going to be comparable to that in rarity.
Yes. Okay. So we're on board so far.
Yeah.
Except the chance of bricking your item completely in Scourge is well above like the chances of bricking your item from the temple. I don't know what the numbers are on it, but on many different items, it is super easy to get something that either makes your item worse or makes it completely unusable. The downsides are incredibly bad and incredibly common. Whereas with Alva Temple, you had a 50% chance to have an item that was still at least as good, if not slightly improved. And a 50% chance to ruin it. Right?
So I haven't done
it's all about
the
chances.
But I strongly suspect part of this is perception and how bad it feels when you get a bad Scourge, especially on tier 3. Because you do have 3 chances with Scourge.
Yeah.
You get a tier 1 Scourge, and maybe it's minus chaos res plus fire res. If you're a CI build, that doesn't ruin your item. That objectively has improved it, but it's not shiny or impressive. So you take it to tier 2, and now you get reduced global defenses on your ES chest, and you get an upside like life regen. Well, that's just trash. So you take it to tier 3, and you now get something like -4 to level of socketed spell gems, and the upside is plus 20 chaos res. And it feels really bad at that point because you're so invested in it. But you had 3 chances, and you could have stopped at the first one. So I don't know if the numbers are actually that much worse than the sacrifice chamber. I think it's just that it feels much worse.
Well, you're comparing a acceptable tiny increase being okay compared to the sacrifice chamber being like an additional arrow or +4 levels or you chain one additional time. Like the successes there are huge and relatively common.
Right,
Whereas
but
the successes in Scourge are also huge, but rare as fuck. If you
But it's
only
all or
count the
nothing.
good ones.
The numbers on it.
Huh?
I have just checked the numbers on it because I was curious as to what the actual thing was. So let's say you wanted exactly perfect agony as a keystone. That's not happening. That's 1 in 5,000 to get that as a keystone on a chess piece. So yeah, that's not happening. However, the chances of getting the double perfect hit with Rigwalds, again, I'm just using Rigwalds because I remember it. I remember the numbers. Were about 1 in 15,000. So it's 3 times as likely to get perfect agony on a Scourge chest on exactly your third attempt as it is to get the double crop to hit perfect. That said, only 1 or 2 of those ever existed. On the
so what if you only want 1 though? Because perfect agony is just 1. You can get 2 upsides. If you're trying to double corrupt for a double corruption, then Scourge should be compared to a double, right?
If you're trying to get exactly one of them at something like 1 in 120 from memory, I'm less sure on that number, to get exactly 1 of chain and +1 arrow on a Rigwalds. But I was also checking the severity of the drawbacks, the ones that are actually ruinous on a chess piece. And I think the ones that are ruinous, so maybe never deal critical strikes, which is 1.4%. Reduced global defenses is ruinous at all tiers, so that's 4,000, that's 1 in 9, that's 11%. You have lose percentage of life, mana, or energy shield on kill are all ruinous because the numbers are so high. That's combined, all 3 of them together is 600 weighting, which is 1.7%. Plus the level of socketed gems is ruinous, that's 1.3%. And then the rest of the stuff, and reduced effective non-curse auras from your skills is 2.7%. So those, that's pretty bad. Actually, I'm forgetting one more. You can apply 1 fewer curse, which is 500 weighting. All in all, it's about 25% to ruin the item with the drawback for most builds. Like it'll vary a bit from build to build, but then it's much more common to get a drawback that's manageable, like minus 27% lightning resist. That drawback alone, or at least the minus X to lightning resist, is almost as common. If you say minus X to 1 resist and not chaos, that's about as common as the ruinous drawbacks all combined.
And there's 3
the numbers
of those.
The numbers are not as bad as people think. They are, it's questionable in places, and I think there's a lot of items you shouldn't Scourge, but there's a lot of them that are really good to Scourge too. Any of the unique unset rings, you should be Scourging away if they're usable.
Right. So here's what's happening with Scourge now. All of your random garbage that's cheap is getting Scourged in bulk for any chance to get anything good. No one, almost no one, there'll always be someone, but no one is crafting their 60 Exalt double elevated boots and Scourging them for movement to hope for more movement speed. That's not happening. The chances of getting a good one, slim to none. No one's doing that with their spell crit, power charge, frenzy charge, additional curse, life, extra as life chest that they've crafted that's cost them 45, 50, 60x to make. No one's putting those in the Krangler.
By the end of month 3 for sure. Especially if we know that it's not going core. Right now we don't know, it's just a speculation, but if this is not going core, you can make some pretty sick legacy items.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. At the end of the league, when people want to burn money on gambles, they will do all sorts of things. But right now, almost no one is doing that, and there's no reason to. It's the right choice to not do it.
But the same could be said back in Incursion League about double corrupting things. People very rarely did it except to try to create Shadow Stitch because the input for that was super cheap. Over time, people have become more and more and more okay with destroying the items. I don't think that numerically there's a problem with the odds of getting good and bad outcomes from Scourge. I think the problem is you get emotionally invested in the item as you Scourge it to tier 2 and tier 3. And so when you get the outcome that is numerically very similar to a double corrupt, it feels way worse. Because with a double corrupt, it's over. You do it once, and either the item's good or it's dead.
Yeah,
And then
most
you
of the
make your
times you
GF
don't even
output.
have to look at the item again because it's either bricked or it's gone. And the 6 white socket outcome is like pretty much a stalemate. And then even if you get double implicit corrupts, they could be not beneficial. Could be like not that great. But with Scourging, like all the bricks are like most of the bricks are soft bricks just because you can't Scourge them again. Yeah.
So here's
Keep
my
on
real,
talking. I'm gonna get my cat. My neighbor is bringing it.
here's my real issue with that is not. It's almost got nothing to do with the percentages. Although from that description, I take that to be the percentages are much worse than Temple. Like from what was just said here, that's a way worse chance than double corrupting things. But also, even if it's roughly even, this entire league was sold to us as Krangle all your items, here's a bunch of good stuff. But the reality is you're running a very, very badly weighted slot machine that what we're talking about right now is like incredible expensive items to make the most disgusting things in the world. But I definitely cannot tell casual Andy to put their brand new pair of gloves in the Krangler. Like, oh, I just saved up and I just bought this 1X pair of gloves. It took me a day to make. And these are my great gloves. What should I just put them on or should I Krangle them first? You should absolutely not Krangle them. It is more likely that they become worse or unusable than they get something good. You cannot take a risk with that. And I don't think that should be the case when we were sold items. My idea for that was more like, you should be safe to do the first level of Krangle on every item forever. There should be no downside. There should only be a possibility for a good side, an upside that you care about. Maybe you get an upside you don't care about, and that's the negative. The negative of the first time you Krangle something is it becomes corrupted. That's the negative. That's what it should be. It becomes corrupted. There is one positive. When you go to tier 2 and tier 3, that's where the disgusting stuff is. And I'm perfectly fine with having a risk there. But right now, casual people shouldn't be Krangling shit. Nothing. You should Krangle nothing if you're a casual player. Because that is
completely false.
You can
I'm going to have
Krangle
to
white
disagree
items.
here.
So I'm talking about your own gear, not Krangle nothing. You should definitely have stuff in the Krangler.
So someone already mentioned it in chat, and this is exactly how every casual should be treating the Krangler. You buy a new pair of gloves, you put your old ones in the Krangler immediately.
All right, so your old pair of gloves instead of 50C are now worth 1C. Congratulations, you lost 2 hours.
If you're making 25C an hour, you're doing it very wrong.
That's what a lot of people are making.
And they're doing it wrong, and they need to go watch some more guys on how to make money.
I agree.
If you're under 1X an hour and you're in Trade League, you are doing it wrong, and you need to go learn how to make money better, because 50C gloves should not be a big risk to you, even as a casual.
Except they are.
And
to a lot of people.
The value that you will get from Krangling those 50C gloves consistently over time, you definitely will make more money than it costs you in bricks. Because a lot of the bricks, let's say it's, plus chaos res minus lightning res. That doesn't ruin the item. That may not improve it to most people. There's going to be that guy that's like, yeah, I have 140% lightning res. I could use some more chaos res. And all of a sudden that 50C goes up to 70. Or maybe it goes up to 1X.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is if you're a casual player, this league is an absolute loot fountain for 6 links, which are the biggest upgrade for if you're the sort of player that gets to level 85 in a league, then this league, like in a normal league, it'd be week 4 that you're getting yourself a 6 link, and that 6 link will be bad. It'll be a tabular. In this league, you'll be getting it in week 2. You'll be self-crafting it, and you'll have 6 or 7 of them just from Stitch Wounds and Trypophobia, just disgorging enormous amounts of 6 links to you. Or you can buy one for a Divine Orb plus 5C that has, Deafening Essence of Greed level stats on it. It'll be miles better. Now, that's at that tier of casual player, that sort of level 85 tier. Now let's take the casual player that gets to level 70 over a league, that aims to get down Katava. They have a fountain of alchemy orbs that they can use all through the campaign, and they get a 5 link, during Act 6, like I did when I was leveling through the campaign myself. So like I had a 5-link by Act 6 because of the Krangler. All these sorts of things that are huge boosts. Now, if you're someone that's a casual endgamer, the sort of player that might hit Shaper in week 8 of a league, then the sorts of things you crangle will vary. But generally, I think you would want to be crangling cheap uniques that are genuinely being used by people, and you should be doing it with a view to trade league. Like, just to, I'll hit something amazing sometimes, and I'll sell them to someone that's richer than me.
So, yep. As a side note, I have had items in my Krangler doing juiced maps as a speed build, like an MFer for the last 2 days, and then a Queen of the Forest miner for like a week before that. And I have had decent bases in my Krangler consistently for 2 weeks now, and I haven't hit a single POG item. I've made stuff slightly better occasionally. My rough guess is probably 20% of the time it turns out positive, but only slightly and not by enough to make it worth anything. I have had no POG outcomes at all, and I've had about 40% of the items straight up unusable.
So my
and that has been over weeks of hardcore play.
Here's what I'm putting in the Krangler at the moment. When you kill invasion monsters with the nodes allocated, you very frequently get 6-socket 5-link items. When I get an armor piece,
farm into mines.
So I just get those armor pieces. I hit them with just a little bit of very low investment rolling to get something that's high life, and then I stick it in the Krangler. And if it goes 6-link, list it for 40C. They've stopped selling now because the Scourge mechanics have flooded the market with these, with these things where you've turned something that was 2C into 40C. Just by virtue of getting an extra socket on it, and either a neutral, like we're assuming you get a neutral Scourge, like, just say plus 17 fire resist, minus 20 lightning resist.
Mm-hmm.
But you hit that 6 socket on it, that 6-link, and someone wants it. It's exactly what someone wants. Tier 2 life, 3 other OK mods on it, and then it's usable, it's a good starting piece. That said, that doesn't work anymore because those casual players that need those things have them, because Scourge produces so many of them.
So far, every use for the Krangler, other than maps, which we haven't touched on, but I'm sure we all agree is disgusting and everyone should be crangling maps all the time. We can touch on that later. Maps are gross, whole different thing. But other than maps, all I'm hearing is there are 2 uses for the Krangler. You can either throw low-tier garbage in it that's cheap, and hope to either make divines or like get lucky on a super cheap unique that becomes better enough to be worth something. Or you're rich beyond measure and you can gamble on your 50x things continuously because you've got a ton of money. And there's no use in between that. You should not be doing your own gear. You should not be putting your own upgrades in there.
I think you're missing one lucrative way to go about it, and that's you can crangle white bases. Or like base items for uniques. That might not be the most consistent payout, and it's very RNG obviously. But I would like to quote the anecdote of one of my stream moderators or like fellow streamers, Gurkenbaum, who actually while leveling crangled an Ezomite dagger for +1 fizz gems, and then mythic orbed it into a cold iron point and sold it for 15x. So that's pretty good. And that's something really low investment. Mythic orbs are like, 11, 12 chaos orbs? And you only need to use it when you get a good set of mods. And then obviously it's still a risk that you lose the item, but it's a very low investment, I think, for potentially huge payouts.
And mythic orbs are super high chance to hit a tier 3 rarity unique like Cold Iron Point.
Yep.
Like, we don't have any hard numbers, but I suspect it's like 10 to 20% to hit CIP.
So here's what I think it should be, though. I think every single time you get a brand new item, once you've colored or socketed it, or if you're willing to do that afterwards, you should want to and be excited to put it in the Krangler. Every single new upgrade you get. At least 1 tier of Krangle, you should be excited to do that. That's why I think no downside on tier 1 at all would be a good thing. Right? The tier 1 mods aren't that good. You're going to get maybe some flat ES, maybe some flat evasion, maybe 20 res, maybe, something little but with no downside, just on the first tier to make people want to do it and get excited by it.
But if it has flat ES as a tier 1, now you can turn a 50 CES helmet into a 50 mirror ES helmet, because you can make something that is better than perfect. And now you're giving a massive power boost out for free.
Well, what's the tier 1 energy shield? Like 16?
That's a lot on a base. Like Hubris Circlet has up to 80, 90 or something like that base amount.
Yeah, but 25 was all we had in synthesis. 25 flat was all synthesis gave, and it was insane.
Mm-hmm. I gave percentage as well, and you could get both on the same item.
Yeah, you got both. But like, I don't know where the list is. I can't look up what the amount of ES on like a helmet is for the tier 1. But that's also stuck in semantics that aren't important. Like if it's too much at tier 1, make that number lower. Like I don't.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like from GGG's point of view, their response to your request would be, well, we could remove the downsides from tier 1 Krangling, but then we'd have to make all the upsides lower because there's no risk to doing it at all. So the outcomes should be significantly worse, and we'd rather have rewarding outcomes than removing the downside. We'd rather give people the feeling that they can get something incredibly good for the price of there being a downside, than to give them a guaranteed
tier 2 and
like
tier
small.
3.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I'm just saying the tier 1s would have to be worse.
I think what they could do, because like ultimately what would happen, because you would end up krangling every piece of gear on your character, which is like 10, I think it's 10 or 11 pieces of gear that you'd be changing. So if each one of them added 1 passive point of power, this is like a level cap increase to 110 in terms of the amount of power that it grants you. If it's about 1 passive point per upside.
That would be an insane amount of power. Most
that's
tier
what they
3
do right now.
Krangles aren't 1 passive worth.
No, a lot of tier 1s are, though.
Yeah, a lot of the tier 1s are pretty significant. Like they're not necessarily things you would take, but even like, there's the quantity of resist you get is usually in the 20s. Now that's a little bit less than 1 passive point in power.
It's less than a notable, but more than a small passive.
Of passive points we would never take.
Well, for example, the life one is 5 to 6% max life on a helmet. 4% for the worst one. That's exactly like a life node.
Cool. Make it 3%.
I think it should just be in specific slots. It shouldn't be in all slots if you're going to have that. Have it so that the belt slot has no drawback. Maybe not the belt, but some specific item slot doesn't have a drawback would be the way to go with that.
I like that a lot better.
It's not just a massive character power boost, because ultimately you think like all the character power boosts that built up over really the explosion of power creep from 3.2 especially, 3.1, 3.2, but then also 3.9 necessitated the massive nerfs in 3.15. Alternately, like the GGG could have done massive statflation on the monsters instead, but ultimately players were just getting to the end of their content really quickly, killing the Maven before they'd done 100 different maps. That sort of level of power. You want to try and avoid having that much power creep. I think a more appropriate amount of power creep is something like what Blight gave. Blight gave the anointments, and that was it. It was 1 piece of your gear got better by quite a bit, but not by a staggering amount. I think you'd say an anointment's worth maybe 3 passive points generally.
Yeah, that sounds... I'd say for most builds it's worth 3 to 4, because a lot of times an anointment is 10 to 15% damage, and a passive should average around 3 to 5%.
Yeah, it can vary, obviously, but it's sort of ballpark around there. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with, if you've got 2% on this piece, on 2% on your boots, 2% on your chest, 2% on your helm, 2% on each ring, you're starting to look towards essentially reversing all of the 315 nerfs. And whilst I know a number of people would prefer that, I think you just find that people would be too powerful for the end game before they get access to it.
I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting any pushback on this at all. I thought everyone would just agree immediately. This seems so obvious to me. I'm shocked.
Well, what's chat think in terms of, did chat mostly agree with Balor or with me? Or
I'm curious as well. I think so far from chat, it sounded like they're fine with like the upsides and downsides.
Yeah.
But what you said about like at the highest power level with the highest expected outcomes, almost reversing the 3.15 nerfs. Haven't those 3.15 nerfs already been reversed largely? Quickly sidetrack to a different relevant topic, which is the current state of the game.
Yes and no, I'd say. In some ways, yes, they have been reversed because masteries have added a lot more power because your tree tends to be more focused.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, no, they haven't been because you can't just get a 6 link and be level 80 and go kill Uber Elder or Cirrus, which is something that used to be relatively easy to do on the strongest builds in the game.
Yeah, assuming you were mechanically capable of dodging the death mechanics.
Yeah,
you didn't need Tai Killer's skill. You could do it with my level of skill, not with Tai's.
And now you probably need to be more like level 90 to do that. So it's reversed it to an extent, but it hasn't completely put us back to where we were.
Yeah. And are you comparing to 3.13 with full power harvest or 3.14 with post nerf harvest?
I was thinking 3.14. 3.13, we're not even close. We're a million miles away.
Which good.
Yes.
Yeah, 3.13 was like I was playing a goof off build the whole league and still did all content in the game except the feared. And I was playing something ridiculously bad. Like, out of my way to be non-optimized.
I'm curious, what were you playing?
I was playing Divine Ire Ignite, which was semi-meta, except for the fact that I was doing a lot of just goofy stuff on the side with Chaos Damage Corpse Explosion Ignite. So
Double
basically,
Obliteration, Elementalist.
Elementalist with Unspeakable Gifts times 3.
Oh, wow.
1 on a cluster, 2 on Megalomaniacs. On an Elementalist, yeah. And so, I had some pretty bonkers Megalomaniacs. I had a Headhunter in that league, but before I had the Headhunter, I was still fine with all that content. I was super squishy because I was focusing so much of my build around doing the goofy stuff that I didn't have the core defenses down, but didn't really need it.
I think, we're definitely not back to 3.13 levels, but I'd say at least if you look at the flask stuff in isolation, the flasks are way better than 3.14. I think, with the exception of curse remove, because that you still don't have curse immunity during flask effect duration anymore. You still can only remove it, or you have reduced effect, but reduced effect is much more available, so you can stack that much higher now easily. But specifically the buff duration of utility flasks, alongside the return of immunities during flask effect to the utility flasks, I think is incredibly strong, because you're still able to trigger them now on conditions, or enkindle them for more effect. But also what I found personally astonishing is the immunity to specific ailments on reactive flasks if you use them during that ailment. So if I use my life flask while I'm shocked, and that has the shock remove suffix, I get shock immunity for 12 plus seconds. I think 12 is the tier 2 mod. It goes up to 14 or 15 or 16 at the highest one.
17.
Yeah, I think 17, yeah.
So you get shocked, you instantly flask up because you also got hit for the shock, right? You took a large portion of your health as damage, so you reactively flask without even noticing that you've been shocked. You remove the shock, and all of a sudden you're immune for 17 seconds. That's almost guaranteed until you use the flask again.
Yeah, I think the net effect of the flask changes has been a buff to magic flasks and a nerf to unique ones. The unique flask nerf was considerable.
Yeah.
Unique flasks had been absolutely off the charts power level wise, and they're now down to earth. But you still see, even post nerf, Rumi's Concoction is still one of the best items in the game. Not one of the best flasks, but one of the best full stop items in the game. And it's far from the only one. Curses matter a lot more than they used to, though.
Yeah, but they're also a lot easier to build around now.
Yeah, you can mitigate them, but mitigating them has a meaningful opportunity cost.
Even though we got back a fairly decent chunk of power this league, it feels like it all came back in much more appropriate places. Like, I'm not getting everything for free now. I'm making decisions. How am I going to do this? What part of my character am I willing to give up? And that feels good. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
at a
think
certain gear level, it's no longer 2 million DPS and curse immunity and ailment immunity. At that same level of gear, it's pick one. 2 million DPS or 1 million DPS plus curse immunity plus ailment immunity. Which do you prefer? And that's a meaningful choice.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's good.
I feel like there are certain things that probably fall through the cracks here. But overall, there are more choices and it's more meaningful. A very good example of this working spectacularly is, in the past, if you're a duelist who wanted to scale block things, you were a gladiator. There was no question. Now, there's a very compelling argument to be a champion, and there's a very compelling argument to be a slayer. One area where this didn't really work so well is if you're a witch who wants to properly scale block things, you're still a necromancer because they added more spell block nodes and they took away attack block nodes. So you still need to be a necromancer to cap both.
Yeah, if you're a melee character who wants to make consistent use of Fortify, you're going to be a champion.
Yeah, I think they missed on the Fortify. I think they got the numbers wrong on Fortify. The idea was right. The execution's wrong.
Yes, I am so frustrated with a Fortify because I'm playing a melee character and I hit fairly hard. My DPS is, I don't know exactly how high it is because I'm not quite sure how the shotgunning on Molten Strike works. But I know I kill things about as fast as I'd expect to with at least 5 mil DPS.
So 6 second time to kill on a Scoured Phoenix, would you say?
It's just really hard when the boss moves so much.
Even saying, so that's the problem, right? Because let's say you are doing 5 mil and you've got the extra projectiles on them, which I assume you do.
Yeah.
That means if we would lower it down to 1 projectile hit, your total DPS is probably only about 700k per individual ball. And those hit 4 times a second. So each ball is only hitting for a tiny amount. You're hitting a lot of them. You don't get Fortify. Fuck you. Like that's I don't.
That's what I was getting to, actually. And it's even worse because I'm playing Molten Strike, which means I'm using slower projectiles, which does not change the melee hit of my Molten Strike, which is what gives me Fortify. And so I have to take out Multi-Strike to hit hard enough. And taking out Multi-Strike just makes the build objectively worse. So I just sometimes don't have Fortify.
Yeah. They got it wrong. Like the numbers are just wrong on Fortify at the moment, and that's why we're seeing such of a convergence on the champion, especially in the harder game modes. So, like if you're playing melee in trade-enabled softcore, you can play pretty much whatever you want. But if you're playing in solo self-found and or hardcore, there is a really strong convergence on the champion as the only viable ascendancy, or alongside the raider in softcore SSF. That's it for melee. And
and to be fair, it is we're all in agreement it's just a numbers problem, right? Like the idea was perfect. Just the ailment threshold that they've picked, super off.
Yep.
Like that needs to be a much lower. But honestly, my spell build shield charge still not comparing with your 200k per hit in your Molten Strike build. Like I'm not doing 2. I'm doing 3. Not 200. Like there's room there to fix that. I think that's just a number tweak. I think I'm really happy with that Fortify change once it's balanced properly.
How would you feel about this as an idea? And I'm not sure that this is right, but just as a broad thought, Fortify works like this: 5% buff plus an additional 3% buff per support gem affecting the skill that invokes the Fortify. So if you strike with a 4-link skill, you're going to get 14%. If you strike with a 6-link skill that is capable of fortifying, then you get 20%. If you strike with a 3-link, you're getting 11%.
So my boots are now Mana Leech Fortify boots that get shield charge, life gain on hit, cull, faster attacks. So now I have a 7-link pair of boots for my spellcaster.
Yeah, I was gonna say that then it doesn't matter whether it's a full 6-link damage or a 6-link utility setup.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Like I like the thought process, but too easily broken.
Yeah. I think the best way to do it would be, instead of having it be based off of the enemy's ailment threshold, instead there should be a level based on the enemy's level, or a level of damage. So the ailment threshold scales with their health, which is a problem when you have something like Delve, where a depth 450 Crystal King, I can't get Fortify on him. There's just no way. He has too much health. I'm never going to hit hard enough. But he's still only the same level as at depth 120. So if you make it scaling based on the enemy's level, you have to hit this level enemy this hard, then you'll be okay.
That's the solution.
Or even something as simple as figuring out what that threshold would be before the less damage taken. Right? Like if you would have hit it on a white tier 16 map, you were hitting hard enough, then you should still be hitting hard enough for Fortify in a 100% Delirious version, right? That's got like 85 or 95% reduced damage taken. You should still get the Fortifiers if it wasn't there.
Someone did some testing on that during the last league. It's 100% Delirious is 96% reduced damage taken by monsters.
Yeah. I'm definitely not happy with the place that Fortify is in right now. I think that sentiment is echoed a lot in the community. I really hope that they're going to find something that they can do for next patch. People linked in chat the threat. Sorry.
Fixing Fortify should be done before. Should be like, I think the priority at the moment for GGG should be, this is for 3.16.2. Firstly, fix the standard map tab issue, because it's like actually breaking the game for 15% of players. Secondly,
that's still a thing. Okay.
There's a standard map tab issue?
I can't convert tabs. If you've got like we don't know because we're template players, but if you're a standard player, you know how you can change, you can bulk transfer your maps from one system to another, like say from Synthesis era maps to current era maps?
Sure.
Yep.
Because of the Atlas squish, there's not enough tile sets for them to map 1-to-1. So you have 2-to-1 mapping. And this means that if you've got, let's say that tier 16 Canyon and tier 16 Primordial blocks from last league both become summits this league. If you've got 45 and 45 of them in your stash, you now have 90. The entire map conversion fails. And as a result, you basically can't play the game in standard at the moment if you're at endgame.
Could you buy a new map tab? Pay to win?
That doesn't work either, because if you occasionally double in leaks, you will also have a whole bunch of other remove only tabs, and the first thing that happens is a remove only tab becomes a permanent tab.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. Of course, you'd have to buy so many to get. Oh god,
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So completely broken. And yeah, like I said, I mean, it doesn't affect me personally, but it's such a serious issue that I think it's a higher priority than fixing Fortify. It's a higher priority than making any changes to Scourge mechanics. It should be it should have been in 3.16.1.
Yeah.
I guess it's certainly a high priority. I do think there's a couple things though that were higher priority, like upgrading unique items. Now, it's weird because there's some things that I would have thought would have been high priority that just haven't been fixed or even talked about, and other things that have been fixed.
Yeah, it's weird to see how they prioritize, because at this point, I feel like we're not going to get any significant changes to Scourge content anymore. Simply because...
Can't see no on that. That makes some significant changes to Ultimatum quite late.
Yeah, no, like, and also Synthesis and Heist, there was some late changes into the league. I'm just like, with this
Heist
one,
was mostly that it was incomplete on release. Like, they'd always built in that the twins were coming, and they were behind schedule. That was because of the pandemic, though.
Yeah. The big one for me, I think, is the fact that when you are scourging items, there'll be a little number of a bottom. It'll say absorbs, X amount of corruption from level 68 plus monsters. That number does not mean anything. There is no number that applies right now. When you are scourging items, you can go get corruption in any zone you want. And it feels like, number one, because they haven't fixed it, you're probably not exploiting, or at least in the sense of they're going to punish you for it. But on the other hand, you kind of are exploiting because you're supposed to follow that number.
I mean, it literally says at least this level, and incubators work like that.
And there are other bugs. That is one of the ones that I think is the most obvious. The one that I think is the most damaging is the fact that right now, there are almost no ways to add scourged monsters to your scourged maps. But there are several ways to take them out so that players can unintentionally brick their content as they try to juice their scourged maps. And this leads to people saying, well, the Scourge map feels bad. I only got 4 rares. They only got 4 rares because they were trying to juice it.
Is that like if you add a Legion, does it replace 2 packs in the Scourge, in the Krangleverse or something like that?
Yeah, I know Strongboxes does it. And in fact, fun one. I don't know if it still does, but originally, Monstrous Treasure would replace all of them. There'd be nothing in the Krangleverse except for the packs you spawn when shifting.
Yeah, that's extremely silly. Like, I do understand that they wanted it to be not like super exploitable and have sort of consistent rewards and not over reward the people who are juicing hard on top of what you already get for juicing out, because you already get like a shit ton of maps or a shit ton of drops and monsters outside of the Krangleverse. So understand that they wanted to limit how far you could juice the Krangleverse itself. But it seems very, very unintended and counterintuitive that by putting stuff onto your map, you can significantly reduce the rewards that you get out of it. Another thing,
anecdotally, but it looks like every master also replaces packs.
Einhar might not. I haven't done enough testing though.
Right.
That feels
I'm only going off just what I've experienced, but it looks like masters also replace packs.
Yeah. Anecdotally, Nico and Alva definitely do, and I did some soft testing in maps. I could see holes in the Scourge packs around Nico, which anecdotal, but very strong evidence.
Yeah, I had that. I was doing. I was running a Val Temple last night, and I spawned a Nico mission on it, and it was really apparent. Like two small rooms spawned next to each other with Nico poo piles in them. And both of them, the Krangleverse was completely empty of monsters, which just doesn't happen in Vile Temple otherwise. Actually, Vile Temple's really empty in the Krangleverse in general. The other thing that's odd is the Delirium Scourge interaction is like simultaneously, like if you think it through, you can do some cool stuff with it. But it's really counterintuitive and awkward and annoying.
Yeah, another thing that's been brought up in chat is, that's not really a bug like what Tenkiei said with the level limiting not applying at all, but it's more like a design flaw that's been an oversight, is currently there's no big reason to run higher content for corrupting or for collecting corruption for the Scourge. It would make sense that you get more corruption out of higher level monsters rather than the same amount. That would have been a great way to encourage people to run higher content rather than lower content. We've seen a resurgence of the white map farm meta this league.
Yeah, I know that my experience, I've been doing a bit of testing of how much Scourge impacts the drop of tileset specific drops, and specifically I picked the divination card, drops in Grotto all the time loyalty. So it's 0.6 fusing orbs a card. And what I've been doing is just tracking, like, I've farmed 100 of them so far, which took about 14 maps, and just tracking how many came from the Krangleverse, how many came from the real world. And I was just trying to get some sort of data on that. Currently it's 70% from the Krangleverse. But the thing that's really apparent there is that if I was running this on a tier 14 Grotto instead of a tier 4, there is no way I'd be getting the Krangle counter up to 230 without dying, at least 1.5 times a map. Whereas in tier 4, I'm dying. I died once, and that was just stupid. I died once in the 14 maps, and that was to being really dumb.
Well, I mean, if you scourge them to tier 10, there's also some really juicy modifiers that make running maps, even on white tier, pretty rippy if you try to do it as a side activity without paying 100% attention to it.
Yeah, these aren't Scourge maps. These are Chisel Elk.
Right.
Chisel Elk and run with the manual with a standard Scourge mechanics. But yeah, take 6,000 or more physical damage on transition. My character can't survive that without a carefully timed Molten Shell.
Yeah, those are really crazy. I also had some with like the degen ones also go pretty high, where you lose X amount of life per second while in Nightmare. That's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea how to mitigate that. I have a map, like, it's only a tier 4 or tier 5, but it has like 1,500 life loss, and it's not like damage of a specific kind, so it doesn't go through your resistance or other mitigations, so it's just lose life X amount. It's like, even with a high vitality and like all the region that I can grab, it's still gonna be a net degen. It's very, very hard. So the only thing against that mod is, so far that I found out, is like, okay, just don't scourge the map that high, just stop crangling it at an acceptable value.
So there is a strategy for those maps that I've thought of, although I haven't actually put it into practice yet, and that is Val skill hit and running. So this requires you to have manual control over when you flip into the Krangleverse, so you can't do it in most of the different types of maps. But you build up enough to manually flip over, then you hit your you hit your transition button. You then do the Val skill. You wait long enough for the Val skill to kill the things that it's going to kill, or until you can't stand it anymore, and then you drop out of the Krangleverse. You probably need a life flask to do it as well, an instant life flask that starts full, because there is like a 5-second cooldown on using the Krangleverse. I think maybe it's 4. So you do your transition, you drop your Val skill, you presumably recover some life just by virtue of using the Val skill, whether it be leech, whether it be gain 2% on life on igniting an unignited enemy, whether it be gain life on killing monsters, then you transition back out. But you're just in and out. It's hit and run.
So I've done quite a few of those maps, and my approach is a little bit different. My approach is to completely and utterly brute force it with life gain on hit, to the point where as long as I have enemies to hit, I can completely ignore the degen, because I'm going to guess 5,000 plus life every second.
Oh, well, that's just a feature of the specific build that you're playing, though. Like, Molten Strike does that.
I did some of them on Fireburst, which I was using life on kill. And I'd use a life flask and all that. And I found it to be very sketchy, because the map will often force transition you when you don't want to be shifted into Scourge. It's very common for that to be a mod. And what I'd have to do is I'd have to actually portal out at that point, because there wouldn't be any enemies left for me to kill. I've killed every single Scourge enemy in the map. I would be shifted in, and I'd either have to wait 15 seconds or so and survive, or I portal out and portal back in, and it shifts me out. So my second solution to that was the life gain on hit. Unfortunately, it doesn't solve the problem of being force shifted in, because if there's nothing for me to hit inside of a Hydrosphere, I don't really get life gain on hit, and I still have to portal out. And this is my big problem with Scourge. The design behind how the mechanic, like the monsters and the mods and all that, interact with a player, feels like everything that GGG has said We hear you, players. We understand that you don't like this. We're going to fix it. That they fixed almost everywhere else in the game. Like one-shots. Well, Pale Angels were a one-shot mechanic. Unless you had 90% max res, if it max rolled, that's 25,000 lightning damage. Except now it does 200% more damage. And now you're just dead. So it feels really counterintuitive. There's damage on damage, and there's mods that completely brick your build. That lose life a second. If you're CI, if you shift in, you are dead. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. CI builds cannot do that map mod. It's the old blood magic problem. And so it feels like they've gone against all of the previous design choices and the years of fixes that we've had for the game. It's really strange.
I think those mods are fine if you have warning that they're coming on. So let's take, for instance, you're playing a life build and you can manage 600 degen a second. You can't manage 900. Or you're playing a life build, or you're playing any build, you can manage 3,000 physical damage on transition, but you can't manage 6,000. In this case, I don't mind it because it's like, it's just a thing. Oh, okay. This is the point at which I have to stop scourging this map. This is a warning. If you scourge this further, you're going to ruin it. And you just take it as a and you go, okay, I'm going to change what I do. But it's different when it's the first one, and lose 300 life a second on CI is an example of that. Tier 1 maps, lose 3,000 physical damage on transition might be, if you're like, if you're like right at the start of progression, that might not be survivable as well.
Right. And the problem that I have with it is you could have a map that you've scourged up to 9, and then from 9 to 10, you get to lose 300 life. If you're in a trade league, you now have to sell that map. If you're in solo self-found, your map is just garbage now. There's nothing you could do to change that because
it'd be really nice if like tier 1 if it's going to hit that, or like tier 4 if it's going to hit that. It's like lose 20 life per second, and you're like, ooh, that's going to keep getting worse, isn't it? That gives you an opportunity to be like, okay, we're now at lose 100 a second, and I have no recovery. I'm probably just going to stop there, and maybe I run that map instead of just boom, have 600 per second loss.
So you're suggesting it should scale exponentially instead of linearly. So instead of 300, 600, 900, make it scale 20, 100, 500, 2,000.
Yeah. Like, I don't mind if you've still got the 9,000 hit at the Scourge to 10 map. It's the fact that I get no warning, right? You put it to Scourge 9 and then boom, there's a 9,000 hit. You're like, oh man, I've been scourging that map for like 6 maps. Look what I do now.
I feel like all of the mods of a Scourged map should roll on the very first one or very early on. And then they should just...
the first few. Yeah.
Right, and then they should just increase in magnitude from there.
So there's a bias towards that happening, but it's not absolute. My understanding, I'm not sure that this is exactly correct, but the way I think it works is that I think it's 10 times as likely to roll something it already has. So if it rolls 300 life degen a second on the first scourging tier, let's say that that's a 3% chance by default, then when you scourge it to tier 2, that might be 30%, and then the other 70% will be the other 97% divided evenly. That's my understanding of how it works. I'm not sure of that, but it just feels like that. And the same with rewards. If your first reward is Simulacrum Splinters or Scarabs, then you are going to scourge that map to 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just think that, like, I'm fine with a lot of these designs. I just feel like with a lot of the Scourge system, the map mods, that if there was also another example with the way you can only shift into Nightmare once you reach the full blood. That was something problematic. I can't get it together, but like basically when there's nothing left in the Nightmare to kill or something like that, and you instantly want to shift out again, you have to wait for 4 seconds, and then you have an almost full bar, and you kill something again, and then you're instantly shifted back, but there's nothing to kill, so you want to shift out again.
Yeah,
it's like some things feel like they're the very first iteration for a playtest and haven't been adjusted since.
Yeah, 3.16.1 fixed that thing that you're outlining there. So now, if you manually exit the Krangleverse in those maps where you are force shifted at 100%, then that drains the Krangle meter to 0.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So that was fixed. There's also a couple of other minor fixes that were made to that one as well. So that one works really well now. It can be a little bit frustrating in some, like if you've got a sparsely populated map, like if the light side of the map is sparsely populated and the Krangleverse is packed, that can still be a bit wrong feeling, but it's not terrible.
Yeah, my biggest gripe with it though, and my biggest moment where I'm like, okay, I'm so glad I'm not playing hardcore this time around, is the double or triple assignment of the league key. That was already problematic before they added Scourge, where the league button and you access your ritual rewards, but then you press it and Tane spawns on top of you, or you place an explosives or something like that. And in the same way now, when you're on top of an expedition, specifically there, it annoys the hell out of me that I wanna shift into Nightmare, but instead I'm placing explosives. But then the moment I run out of explosives, instead of placing explosives, I shift into Nightmare. And it's like when you're like sitting there and you're min-maxing, reading all the little modifiers on the remnants, and you're trying to place it, sometimes you don't pay attention to your count of explosives, right? And then like on the last one where you think you're placing an explosive, and then all of a sudden you're in Nightmare, and like 10,000 monsters are around you, and you're instantly dead because you didn't prepare to fight now. And that's just something, if I died to that in hardcore, I'd be very close to rage quitting the game, because it's such evidently bad design that I need to call out that hasn't been addressed at all. It's like, I don't know how something like that can make it past the drawing board into alpha testing, let alone past alpha testing. Like, that's the first thing as an alpha tester that I would have pointed out. Because it's incredibly frustrating when you don't have control over your game, and the game just seemingly randomly does things that you don't intend for it to do.
And the worst part is that if you're playing a fast build, you do not have the time to react to it at all. If you have 300% move speed, you are going to get to that expedition and be unable to shift out. And you better hope that you have a logout macro, because otherwise you're just dead. And normally I'd say, well, yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that rippy content in hardcore where dying matters, right? Except that rippy content can now be in literally a tier 3 map, because 300% more damage is insane. And maybe it's safe to push it, except when there's something like Expedition in the way where you can't control shifting out. And it's just absolutely terrible design, on top of a terrible design that monsters really shouldn't have a stacking deal more damage and also more quant buff, which is in and of itself a massive mistake.
That's my favorite part.
The quant buff.
To be fair, I agree. It definitely shouldn't be there, but it's still my favorite part.
Fair.
Yeah, I know. My findings are that basically having Scourge is like a winged divination scarab for every map. If you're getting the Scourge counter to about 220 or so, then it functions like a winged divination scarab. And that's just the divination scarabs. And then it's a winged reliquary scarab as well, probably more than a winged reliquary scarab. Not that you'd use them on most maps, but it's just absolutely bonkers when it comes to farming div cards or tile set drops.
Even exalts. I've gotten so many exalts from Scourge that I have honestly lost count. It is the most raw exalt drops I have seen since Legion.
Heist?
I don't count those because those were from boxes.
Because those were doubled by Vendari.
Yeah. But like if we're talking kill a monster and an exalt comes out, hands down the most since Legion, and we're only a month into the league.
Yeah, we're not at full power yet either, which means that we're not at full speed. We're not handling Scourge as well as we will be in 6 weeks' time.
I found one exalt on the floor the whole league. I just spent 2 days in full MF gear in tower and found a whole bunch of nurse cards and everything. Still no exalts. I just don't get exalts apparently this league. I don't know what happened. It just
your streamer client is defective. You should contact Chris.
I made tons of money. It was worth it. Like I bought 2 inspired learnings at 6x each in the same day off just the profit from MFing tier 3 maps on like an 8x build. It was really profitable. Didn't find a single X though.
What tier of divination scarab were you using?
Just the first one.
Rusted.
I was just using rusted and 3 fragments. That's it.
That's 3 fragments.
Yep.
And your towers, how are you rolling your towers?
Just up to 80%, no Val. Just roll them to 80 and hit go. I was putting the second tier of sextants on as well. So it was like, the idea was supposed to be like, what's the minimal investment I can get in the minimal character that I can get that's still MF for the cheapest amount that feels really good and will still provide a good amount of like currency per hour. And I settled on it now costs about 8x to build the character, and you still need to be running the divination scarab, but you only need the minor amount. The rest can be the basic ones. You can just use the tier 2 sextants, and you get to run it still very quick and very good. Still huge profit, but still didn't get an X the whole time, and that's on me. I don't know how that happened. Like, I should have exalts.
Scared off the RNG gods.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes you just get random drops. Like today, I was testing some stuff, and so I was running Cemetery Map, and I was not even alching them. I was just running Cemetery Map because I wanted to see how profitable or useful it was to open a really cheap low-tier map, go kill the Harbinger, pick up its drops, and then leave and do it again. It was about 60 seconds per map. I got a brother's stash randomly while I was doing that. It dropped from one of the times I hit the Scourge button, by the way.
Yeah, funny that.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know how many exalts did I get. I got a handful. One from a blighted map, and I think most of the other exalts dropped on the ground, but only like 3 or 4 total this league. Granted, I did really not stream a lot. I was away last week for almost an entire week, and yeah, and I'm also not playing a blaster build. Honestly, I kind of, after hearing you guys talk about the tower, I mean, I've seen people run towers, but honestly, it gets me into the mood of rolling like a Death's Oath walking build and just blasting towers with it. Just running through it, everything going poof, poof, poof.
I want to test Armory.
My problem with that is I see I need to go backwards.
At the moment?
Which Armory?
The map Armory.
The Armory map.
That has, the 1/8 of a patient. Sorry, the 1/8 of a nurse div card in it. The patient.
I'm not sure.
11.
I guess. Ooh, 11's high. I would guess
11.
In terms of the card drops, it would be a little bit worse than Saint's Treasure from Ghetto, which on a non-MF build, I was getting multiple Saint's Treasures an hour. Okay,
Saint's Treasure and Patient are almost exactly the same drop rate, according to one of the recent mass turn-ins of one of the very recent mass turn-ins of stack decks, and I believe stack decks respect the weighting of the divination card raised to the power 0.8. So, sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, it's fine. So that's actually helpful. So I'm glad you did. But yeah, I was not running an MF build at all. I had a Biscos because that made my build faster. But aside of that, I was just playing a Fire Burst build that I'd league started with. And I was consistently getting Saint's Treasure drops. In, I think it was 2-3 hours, I farmed a full set. Now, is that anecdotal? Yes. But also, if something happens 10 times in 2 or 3 hours, it can't be that rare of an occurrence.
Fair.
Yeah, like statistically 10 times your standard deviation, if you've got 10 successes, is about 3. So there is a realistic chance that your expected amount that you looted was under 4. So, you know, it could be that if it was expected you get 3.6 of them in 2 hours, and you could get 10 through dumb luck.
Yeah.
That's not extraordinary luck, but it is unlikely. Likewise, you could be, 15 could be the expected amount. You just have to play with it.
Yep.
Come back when you've got 100 successes. That's when you can tell something about the drop rates.
Sadly, that's going to be a while because I stopped doing that map because that map is anti-lightning strike, and I've been using lightning strike to clear maps on my molten strike character.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah, you guys are getting me really hyped to run some things a little bit faster and focusing on just pushing the bad damage on my character to acceptable levels. But maybe I should focus on just running something speedy and make big returns and then invest that into my top-end damage character. Quick sidetrack to the Blood Crucible progression system. I assume you guys have that fully maxed out. I still have like the last 3 points or something like that take an awful lot of time. But
I'm at 58, I think. I'm missing a couple ranks in the very last thing.
I'm at 54.
What is the very last thing for you? Is the one where you get an additional modifier? Or?
Yep, it's add an additional explicit modifier.
Oh, you saved the Exalt to last, did you?
Yep.
I'm saving first tier weapon and quiver corruption till dead last.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was saving the 1 rank lower detrimental modifier because I'm like, yeah, if you get a good detrimental modifier, it doesn't really matter which rank it is, right? Like whether you lose 27 lightning res or 25 or whatever the other one is, doesn't really matter that much.
The reason that I'm doing the Exalt one last is because every item that I have crangled this league has been completely done. It either already has 6 mods or it's a unique. And so that does nothing for how I use it.
Yep. Yeah, I use firstly, I'll share the experience chart because a lot of people don't understand just how much this chart scales up. I don't know if you can use that, but I just put the link to it in the Discord chat. But 50 of 63 is 20% of the way to 63 of 63. So it's very much like character leveling. Last, I think just going 62 to 63 requires 1 million XP, which is the same as getting to 46.
Oh, I'm farther along than I thought then. I'm 59, not 58, because I have 4 ranks to go, I'm pretty sure. 4 or 3.
So you're a bit more than halfway then. You're at 60%.
Yep.
Yeah. But the system will take a while. My estimate is that if you're getting your maps to 180, that this will take you about 900 maps. And so this is something that will be your 39th challenge for most people.
I get 200 to 250 on average.
Yeah, then in that case, 700, 800 maps will get you there.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah, it really takes off exponentially towards the end there.
Yeah,
but that's okay because like you already got most of the relevant stuff, and at this point, with a little bit of luck, you can get very juicy outcomes. Yeah. I still haven't had a Krangle with like an additional beneficial modifier, like 2 beneficial modifiers. Just thinking that the outcomes can be so incredibly good potentially. I mean, most likely you're not going to get it, but like just the slim chance of getting something insanely good.
I've had a couple, nothing too spectacular. My spectacular ones have all been upsides with an ignorable or, in some cases, completely pointless downside.
Yeah, I think my best thing is still like a Stark Conjurer's Helmet with spell suppression and negligible downside. I think was a chance to be cursed with silence on hit or something like that, on spell hit, and you can be silence immune, obviously.
Yeah. My best would probably be a Tinker Skin that dropped. I was sad it wasn't a Impulses, so I corrupted it. I hit +1 gems, so I Krangled it, and I hit +1 trap gems.
Nice.
That's solid, yeah. I had a Tinker Skin drop off one of the bosses, so where you get 2 Scourge positives and 2 Scourge negatives. But it was like, I think it had one overwhelming drawback that wrecked it.
Yeah, the boss drops often do.
The
best thing I've got is 60 evasion on a Queen of the Forest.
Oh yeah,
which
I
is
remember.
nice because it's Queen of the Forest, but like it's not. You know, I know it's a 2700 Queen of the Forest. Like, who cares? It's not that big
I mean,
of a deal.
it's great early on, but like later on, it's too easy probably to reach the cap on the movement speed bonus from evasion anyway.
Yeah, I'd say the most interesting one I hit was a Curse on hit, Blasphemer's Grasp with Temp Chains on hit that I sold for 15 exalts. It was Frostbite and not Flammability, but it was pretty cool.
Mm. That'll be best in slot for someone's hipster build.
Not even hipster build, just really good for Cold Dot Occultist because non-damaging ailment effect is so strong now. And with alt ailments, you can get things like the sap on block, I think it is.
Yeah, those shields are nuts. Absolutely nuts.
And you're already an occultist, so you chill things and you reduce the damage they do to you. And now you sap things because you have decent block, and all of a sudden your build's just insanely survivable.
For the benefit of viewers, do you want to just do a recap on the heater tune power shield and the like? Just because these are really obscure bases and they're the best shields in the game. The exothermic.
You mean the heist specific base shields?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to give a little bit of a background on them.
Well, they're added in heist. They apply an indirect ailment when you block. So there's the heater tune tower shield is the armor based one. It applies Scourge when you block. Scourge is default, I think, to 10%. So like on my character, it's 16%. So it's just like a 16% decrease to the enemy's fire resistance when they attack you and you block it, which happens often enough that it's just an amazing DPS buff. Then there's the sap on block version of, it's like a titanium spirit shield, but less ES, but provides, I think it's a 6% decrease to enemy damage. So you block one hit, and then the rest of the hits are toned down a bit. But if you've got any investment in ailments, that's going to be better. And then there's the cold version, which applies brittle, which is absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Brittle is so OP, so ridiculously good. If you're not using Leadership's price on your build, then you should seriously consider these heist shields.
Also, just one other note, if you're using one of them and you're stacking non-damaging ailment effect, if you get something like chill an enemy on block or shock an enemy on block from your regular old influence mods, that will also be scaled by your non-damaging ailment effect.
Yep.
Just quickly, I don't know whether you explained brittle, but for the people in chat who don't know, brittle is the alternate ailment for cold, and hits against brittle enemies have up to 15% chance to critically strike afflicted enemies. And that's insane. That's base crit chance. So it's scaled by your increases. And yeah.
It's the way that I explain Leadership's price to people is that this is the heist amulet that has 100% drop rate from the twins. Although, like Voices, it has versions that you can't turn from one into another. But even just any version of it, even if it's got like bad resistance changes to it, it has, when your top two stats, so strength, dex, and int are balanced. So if you've got, say, 212 strength, 212 int, 77 dex, that's balanced because 212 equals 212, doesn't matter what the lowest one is. Then all of your damage scorches, inflicts brittle, and inflicts sap. And this also locks you out of using the traditional ailments of freeze, chill, ignite, and shock, but these ones are so strong. Like, it's like having every gem you are using supported by 3 copies of increased critical strike support that all stack, and that's just then you've got Scourge, like having everything that's supported by elemental penetration, and then you've got the sap, which is like half strength fortify.
Yeah, it was one of the top candidates for getting a nerf this league. Like, people have been already exploring various ways to make good use of brittle last league and the other alt ailments, and brittle was definitely very high on the list of expected nerfs for a lot of people.
That's important too, though. You can, even though you can't chill or shock, you can still use skitterbots and get their entire amount of chill and shock on the mob as well.
And then add unbound ailments to make it even better.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about ailment scaling because my first character was Fireburst, and originally I was taking the normal nodes that everyone took for the elemental defenses. I forget what the node is called, and reflect immunity. Then I realized that I don't hit hard enough to really care about reflect anyway, and a little bit of extra LEEHP isn't going to necessarily save me from a Pale Angel anyway. But what will save me from that Pale Angel is going Shaper of Winter and just making it much harder for the thing to actually ever hit me. So I went triple Shaper plus Exposure, and I used Blasphemer's Grasp, Elder Gear. I had fully Chilling, something like 20% Scorching and 49% Shocking.
I forgot Blasphemer's Grasp existed. I'm gonna get myself a set of that. As soon as this podcast is over, I am getting myself a set of Blasphemer's Grasp, and I'm fixing up my resist, whatever it takes to make that thing fit.
It is very, very, very good now. It's one of those items that it wasn't. Also, I can't take full credit for this. Dan did do it first. This was a character he used in 3.14 to boss kill in hardcore. His version was with a bow. He had 10,000 life, and it was just super tanky. My version is with a staff. I switched out life for block, and I put on a brass dome and determination. Because who doesn't like running anger, determination, herald of thunder, malevolence, and vitality?
Brass dome determination is so good with molten shell.
Determination has become like a staple aura that I try to fit into every build.
Mm.
I just really, really like having determination now.
Yeah, I think there's a few builds I wouldn't necessarily use it on, but for anything that doesn't have at least 50% true fizz mitigation, I'm putting that determination on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, the synergy it has with Molten Shell is so good that I think unless you've got a strong reason not to use Molten Shell, then you should use Determination and Molten Shell.
Yeah. The main strong reason that I can think of would be either mana scaling, in which case you want Arcane Cloak, or for whatever reason, you're running a very greedy build, I guess, or you're a Necromancer. You're either running a very greedy build and you need Steel Skin to deal with bleed, or you're a Necromancer and you want the Bone Armor one.
Yeah, but even if you have like consistent endurance charge generation, you would pick Molten Shell over like cast when damage taking a Mortal Call.
Yes, because okay, so this might be different from how a lot of people see it, but I always disliked cast on damage taken Immortal Call for most situations. If I was using Immortal Call, I was going to use it manually because I want it to go off before I get hit the first time, not afterwards. And if I'm stripping away my endurance charges, I want to use it at a time when I can regenerate them. Unless I'm obviously on a build that just gets them always because it's, oh, you've been hit recently here.
Mm.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. I've also personally found that determination is really good, but for me, it was also, I could easily sacrifice anger because anger is a large amount of flat damage, and that's really great. It also fuels into my ignites. But with Martyr of Innocence, you already get so much flat damage that it's just not that much of a more damage multiplier overall. That determination, that saving you from the occasional death in tier 14 plus maps, especially in Nightmare, felt a lot better.
Yeah, I found that when I swapped from using anger to using determination, I went from dying literally twice a map to dying once per 8 to 10. And this is on a squishy build. Like, this is not this is playing recklessly on a squishy build.
Yeah, numbers check out. I can confirm that's about the feeling that I have about it as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like
sounds
like
accurate.
Yep.
The Tangleverse went from dangerous at 80 to dangerous at 120 in red maps. Maybe 130, 150.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my build was ever squishy. I had invested in defenses early, but for me, the biggest switch was swapping Cows out and going into Brass Dome, because I already had the determination. And the problem was that the determination was not working very well in the Krangleverse, because a lot of the things that kill you are actually elemental, and this was before several of the things got a 60% damage nerf. And so what I found was that if I had Vol Molten Shell up, I was just getting straight one-shot through it. because it only mitigated 40% of the damage. And like I mentioned earlier, Pale Angels had a 25k top end before all the more damage mods on your map. Put on Brass Dome. Now, if I have regular Molten Shell up, I don't die to Pale Angels. They also can't crit me. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think there might have been some bugs with some of the crit masteries where it didn't seem to be quite mitigating it. Also, I now, if I have VMS up, don't die to a ton of stuff. And with increased duration, it was up almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I basically had a rotation where I would be able to jump into Scourge with VMS up. It would last the whole time. And then by the time I'm ready to jump back in, VMS would be up again. It was great.
Yeah, I need a
can't
Molten
remember
Shell.
a single time where I've manually triggered a guard skill. I don't think I'm a good enough player to do that.
For me, it's usually boss fights.
I run CWDT Molten Shell level 1 or low level and a manual cast Molten Shell level 20 at the moment. As soon as I'm going,
put each other on cooldown.
Yep, yeah, they put each other on cooldown. But if I'm going into the Krangleverse, my ritual is QEV. Q for Molten Shell, E for Vile Fireball, V for Phase Shift, and then I pop in, and I'm already in a situation where the enemies, where I'm hitting everything around me. That's causing them to both be ignited and shocked, which is then turning on my Pyroshock clasp, the defenses of that. And I've just got a big ablative buffer of health above my pathetic 4,100 health.
Yeah, I was using... Oh, sorry.
Just out of curiosity, why not Vile Molten Shell? It's like level 12 or 14.
And also interferes with Vile Fireball Soul Generation.
Yeah.
Also, it's less mitigation.
Yeah, yeah. If I was tankier, the less mitigation on VMS would be fine, but I'm squishy, so I actually need regular Molten Shell. I'll cast it 2 or 3 times in the Krangleverse.
Yeah, I played a fairly similar build. I was actually using Pyroshock Clasp for a long time as well. I finally swapped it out for an Elder Stygian when I ended up getting one with life, percent life, and all that, because I wanted cooldown reduction for my Fire Burst.
Yeah, yeah.
But great item. And so, yeah, when I had low HP, I was running into the same problem where VMS did not mitigate enough, so I had to use regular Molten Shell. When I got more HP, when I was super tanky with a Brass Dome and everything, VMS worked beautifully because it absorbed so much more.
Yep. Yeah, VMS is like cast and forget and just be like, VMS is like turn on God mode for 10 seconds if you're tanky enough that it becomes God mode. Molten Shell is more, okay, this is just me preemptively using an instant life flask before it's needed.
Yeah, I really need that in my build. Honestly, I've been using Steel Skin for way too long, just because I was lazy for switching it out, and also I wasn't sure whether Molten Shell would be that much better if I wasn't able to link increased duration, but honestly at this point Molten Shell with Determination probably much better, and I also don't use a Val skill yet, so using Val Molten Shell on top, even if I don't activate it, would be straight up better, I think.
2 things. 1, try it. And 2, if you've got the space to craft it on your gear, there is a bench craft for gain 2,200 to 3,000 armor while during soul gain prevention.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm using that on my shield at the moment, and that is fantastic as well. Like, that just means that the time at which I'm getting hit the most is when I've just cast Vile Fireball. In your case, it's probably when you've just cast Vile Molten Shell. And so you then just you're charging forward, but you've got this huge ablative shield protecting you.
Yeah, I'll definitely try and fit that in. And in regards to Balor saying that you can't manually activate these things, just wait until you got a Mage Blood, and then just replace your flask buttons with the guard skill buttons.
But I can't reactively press flasks either.
Oh,
Even
right.
when we had the piano, it just becomes this, right? Like you just press every few seconds, you just press them all. I can't react quick enough, man.
That works for guard skills as well.
I mean,
it's not
I'm
I'm
old
sure,
and slow, and
I'm sure there's people who reactively guard skill in maps. I don't. I will proactively guard skill. So let's just say Harvest. I'm about to activate a Harvest. If I'm using a Mortal Call, I will watch the animation and I'll pop it right before the mobs go active. But where I really like Immortal Call has always been on bosses. Because let's just say you're doing the Feared and you get hit by the Synthesis Monster's reverse teleport slam. If you know that, and you'll know because you get slowed and you get teleported, and then about a second later you take a massive amount of damage, you can activate Immortal Call. By the time casting damage taken Immortal Call goes off, you're already dead.
Yeah. Yeah, as like a last line of defense against slams, especially things like the best example of reactively using guard skills is the Minotaur. The Minotaur's attacks all take 1.755 seconds from memory. I did look that up a while ago. It's not like I've got all of the details committed to memory like that. But it means that they're all super slow. And so you've got plenty of time to go, oh, he's doing a big donk. Q. Me eat big donk on head. Me still survive.
Yep.
Yeah, they're very, very big telegraphs.
And start beating him from behind.
I actually didn't have a Minotaur for the longest time this league. I just had Chimeras and Hydras and everything, and I was like, how am I going to get a Minotaur? And then I actually found out that you can Horizon between the Shaper Guardians. I didn't know that was a thing. Because I was afraid that if I try, I'll lose the Shaper Guardian and it'll just turn into a random tier 16 from my Atlas. So I didn't try it until I verified with chat that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it was changed a few leagues back. The Elder Guardians need that tech.
They don't have that yet?
Nope.
So when I Horizon Orb an Elder Guardian map, it just changes the base type of the map, but keeps the same Elder Guardian. Okay.
Correct.
It's good to know. That's
one question I have about Elder Guardians. Has anyone tried to Val a tier 15 Elder Guardian? Do they ever become a Elder Guardian occupied Val temple?
I've definitely Val'd a lot of them. I don't think that it has been.
I'm going to find out right now. There'll be one on trade if those exist.
That's a good
True,
point.
there would be one on trade. But that would be weird, because you also don't get map completion when you do an Elder Guardian, because you don't beat the map boss, right?
There is.
Correct.
There is a Val temple. Area is inhabited by Enslaver. On trade.
Well, there we go. It can happen. It's just pretty rare.
Is that good for anything?
At VT?
It's 20C, which is
normal price.
Yep.
I'll be back in 1 minute.
That's crazy.
I actually had no idea because I've never Val'd those before.
Oftentimes when I'm on my full endgame juiced build, unless there's a mod that I can't do, I will just Val them because I'm like, yay, extra juice in the map.
Yep.
Especially since for a long time that didn't affect the boss because the boss had no mods.
Yep. Also, yeah, you do get completion for a map, by the way, if Elder Guardian is in it.
You do?
You get the completion when you kill the Elder Guardian. Now.
Oh, okay. So it does. Oh, okay.
But that.
Well, that makes it way easier then.
Maps you don't.
Yeah, blighted maps are the only way you don't get completion.
I just remembered that because I had that happen to me on Fields this week. I still haven't got completion on Fields, and that was why.
Because you only had a blighted map.
Correct. I have to just check its Horizon tier and then just get one.
Fields Batman.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I always say Fields amazing, man, because I like the layout actually. Anyway, we did sidetrack a little bit from the Blood Crucible. I quickly wanted to answer the question of do we think that it's a good system? Like, does it have too much backloaded rewards, as in like you have to invest too much time into the system before it actually is worth engaging with it? Or do you think it's in a good spot? Assuming, we all probably think it won't go core, but assuming it will go core, would the Blood Crucible progression be fine going core like that?
So are we talking only the Blood Crucible?
Yeah, well, that specific aspect of the league. Sure, there's other aspects that definitely need addressing when if goes core, but like just the in-league progression system, because it's not character bound, right? It's like
it's
the
account
entire
bound, right?
league for the entire league/account.
So for clarity, you're talking the leveling up to 63 of the Blood Crucible only, just the leveling process.
Yeah, basically, whether you think passes would need to be shifted in between them. Is there some things that you get way too early or way too late that are way too crucial to actually using the system, engaging with it? It's hard for me to tell, so I'm wondering whether you have any strong feelings on that.
I'll come in last. I got ideas, but
I have some ideas on things that could be shifted around and changed. For example, the exalting. I think it really needs to be 100%, because that feels like the sort of thing where if there's just a chance, you're never going to put that 5 mod item in that's actually good in the hopes that it randomly gets exalted.
Well, unless it's already corrupted.
Well, but why are you crangling it in that case? Is it corrupted and already good and it just happened to drop corrupted? And also, with other things like a tainted exalt, it might be better to just use that, and then if it hits the 6th thing, crangle it, as opposed to the other way around. So I feel like that one should scale up to 100%, but it should only be able to add 1 mod. So
throughout the entire 3-step scourging process.
Right, that at tier 3, it would add a mod. And then so
guaranteed, yeah.
Let's say 33% chance at tier 1, 33% chance at tier 2, or it could be 5 and 10%. It doesn't matter. Numbers at tier 1 and 2, 100% at tier 3. I think that should be changed. In terms of the linking and the socketing of items, I don't particularly think that adding sockets is that useful. I would honestly rather see turn a socket white there.
Oh, I'd like that.
Linking, I think, is in a good spot. I also feel like the weapon and quiver one can just kind of be combined and the system can be streamlined, because it does feel a little bit pointless to have both, but maybe that's good because the last levels are so difficult that you get to choose, well, I'm only crangling armor. I don't need to crangle weapons. So I'm not 100% sure on that one, but if we assume it's going to be streamlined and that the EXP curve is going to be reduced because you're not doing it all the time, you'll gain levels a lot faster, maybe combine those just to remove some bloat.
That's fair. Valor, do you have any thoughts on that? Did you experience anything during the progress of the progression of the system where you're like, okay, I wish I would have had this specific node from the start because it makes crangling so much better?
I mean, the only thing, like, not really. I think it took a little bit too long to get my second map slot. But
yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was pretty happy with most of it. What I wasn't happy with was the fact that my third Krangle slot is completely random. And there are people who have killed like 150 bosses in maps and don't have it yet. And also the fact that there's no third map slot. And there's a third Krangle slot, and now it's uneven, and that it just bothers me. I want them to either take one away or give me one of the other. I don't actually care what one. It just bugs me.
It's misaligned.
Yeah. Like there should either be 3 in each row or just the 2 in each row. I don't care which one, but please fix. But yeah, that and the randomness of getting your third one. But as far as leveling it goes, I don't hate it. Like Tenkiei said, the socket one was completely pointless. That does nothing, but that would be great if it was a chance for a white socket. But otherwise,
yeah, I'd agree with the socket ones and even the add another link feeling rather unimpactful because tainted fuse and jewelers exist and there are a much more efficient means of doing that. I mean, occasionally you get to save one of those then, but yeah, it doesn't feel really that great. I feel like that what they were trying to do, they tried to make the system more rewarding as you progress through the system. I feel like some of those rewards could have shifted, or some of those improvements rather, could have been shifted into running higher content over lower content. Specifically the ones where we already touched on that, but the fact that you don't get more corruption in higher maps compared to lower maps. There are passes in the Blood Crucible that make you absorb corruption faster on the items, but just make that tie into the level of content that you run rather than that progression system. Because sure, the further you progress in the system, the more rewards you get out of it, but you also get those more rewards if you then go back and regress and do white maps instead, where it would have been great if there was an inherent benefit to running higher content.
Yeah, I think no inherent benefit to running higher content is a big problem with Scourge. And I honestly can't tell if this was a design choice that ended up being an oversight, or if there's something fundamentally broken with Scourge's code. Because it could just be, since the level requirement for scourging items and monsters doesn't work, that Scourge does not know what level monster you kill. It knows the monster power, because that seems to be how it gives the XP. But it does not actually know the level, so it has no way to know that the Scourge reward tile should be giving you a red tier map reward versus a white tier map reward, so it just gives reward.
Maybe.
Can't confirm or deny that one, though. Only GGG would be able to.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Sirgog, you said you want to go last on the Blood Crucible thing because
I was just giving everyone. I just felt I'd been talking too much, so I thought I'd give everyone else a chance to jump in first.
That's completely fine. Like you're the guests. You're in the center. You're the experts, and I'm just the interviewer, and Balor is there for comedic relief.
Experts. I think that the diminishing return system is fantastic on it. The fact that you get something like that, you get 50 out of 63 passive points. So you get to the 80% mark of the tree being unlocked at 20% of the way through. So you get 80% of the power with 20% of the investment, and then you really have to fight for that last 20% of the power if you want it. That's a really good system. I think that if this goes core, and I kind of hope it does, I like a lot of the things about the Crucible myself. Just as nothing else, for nothing else, it's a massive boost to progression in items in like Act 6, 7 when you first start to need it, and it's also a massive sink for unique items. So that some of the Elk Shard uniques, here's a better way of using them than just vendoring them. But anyway, let's start with saying that the diminishing returns is excellent. The Exalt a mod, I'm a bit warmer towards than you guys are, and that's because my standard pattern of use for this is get a 6-socket 5-link item, slam it with an essence that might make it sellable, and essences have a 2 in 3 chance to have 4 mods on the item. Benchcraft a mod on if there's a slot for it, and then stick it in the Crangulator, and you'll end up getting something serviceable that someone may well want, and you end up with, but you'll more often than not, you'll have a 5 mod item going into the Crangulator. If you get a 6 mod on it, that's all upside. So that's my general, because that's been my use pattern, because that means that I like the Exalter mod thing. I also really like the Razor tier of a mod, even though the probability of that is really low. So those things that I think are really good. I think, though, that some of the stuff at the bottom shouldn't, like the 25% increased corruption absorption, that stuff could go away, because I don't think Scourge is something that, if it does go core in its current form, should appear until like at least Act 5 or so. And that means you could just start with the equivalent of 10 points and just basically having the bottom row all allocated. Additionally, the numbers need to be lower, like 8 million XP is right for the Scourge League. It's not right for a future league.
I hope it doesn't go core, but I kind of hope that it does, but just Scourged maps. I just want Scourged maps to drop on the floor. And just for us to be able to run those and do the bosses and whatnot. And they drop already Scourged, and that's the only part that goes core. I don't want
We haven't discussed that at all. Like, how do you feel about it going core? Do you think it should go core? Balor already answered.
So I'm going to agree with Balor, but go even more extreme and say it's going to be the worst disaster since Harvest, And if it stays core without major reworks, like complete ground up reworks, it is going to be harvest levels of bad in terms of changing player expectations. Because Scourge punishes you for juicing your content, punishes you for progressing your content, and greatly rewards you for not doing these things, which sets a very, 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 very unhealthy expectation. We saw it in Legion. And then every league for the next 2 years after Legion, well, this league sucks. It doesn't give rewarding content. Every time. I have to go into red maps to do the league mechanic. This sucks. It was ridiculous. And so I really, really hope it does not go core without serious reworks and serious fixes.
Would you be comfortable with just random Scourge maps dropping here and there, and you get to run a Scourged map, but that would be it?
If they fix the reward tiles to work like everything else in the game, yes. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I think that the key change it needs in terms of rewards is that the top end rewards, like the Simulacrum Splinters, the Scarabs, they should not appear until you are scourging a red map. Then you could have some stuff that's still juicy, like still has the potential to be reasonable in the lower tier. If you're running a low tier Scourge map and it's got Legion Splinters on it, well, low tier maps that have a Legion encounter in them have a strong bias away from Templar and Maraketh encounters. Yellow tier maps have a strong bias away from Maraketh, but I think Templars about, it might be like, I think that the low tier maps are like 30, 30, 35, 5 in terms of the percentage chance. Red tier is like 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. And yellow tier is something like, 23, 23, 23, 23, 8. I'm not sure of those numbers, but it's something broadly like that, where Templar comes in red and yellow, Maraketh in red, and the other three are in all tiers. Well, have Scourge respect that. Have it so that you're running a white tier map that's got Legion drops. Well, okay, you can do that, but you're mostly going to get Karui, Val, and Eternal Splinters.
That makes
Have it
sense.
so that you can get
Pretty
Scarabs.
sure
They're all
you
rusted.
can get Maraketh in white tier maps.
It's rare though. If you're talking about getting it as a Legion encounter. Yeah, I think it's like 5% of the time. Someone did some testing in Legion League, and Maraketh encounters and Templar ones were both very rare in white maps.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot we could do with that. And the way I would do it, feel free to disagree here. Scarabs could appear even in white maps, but in white maps, you'd only get rusted Scarabs. Yep. In yellow maps, you'd get rusted and polished. In red maps, you'd get rusted, polished, and gilded. And in tier 14 plus, it would bias slightly more towards the gilded. I also think that this could be applied to splinters just by size. Like right now, I could easily get a stack of 28 Simulacrum Splinters from a 10 splinter map. Well, maybe in a white map, that should be 3. Or maybe it shouldn't be able to go up to 10. Maybe in white maps, you can only Scourge it 3 or 4 times. That would be the max Scourge. So if it drops, you get a 4 Scourge white map. Then in yellow maps, it goes up to maybe 7. And then in red maps, it goes up to 9. And again, in the tier 14 to 16 bracket, it goes all the way up to 10.
Yeah, I like that. I also think that Watchstone count rather than map color should be the thing. But that's it. That's all getting changed next league.
Yep.
So you have
for
zero.
A very long.
Sorry, you go.
For a very long time, red tier, yellow tier, white tier has been a fucking irrelevant thing. The only reason it matters is for dailies. Like it's not.
Map mod intensity as well.
Yeah, but the important thing is always how many Watchstones do I need for that map? Like that's what I wish it was broken up into, not white map, yellow map, red map. It needs to be how many Watchstones.
There is a sizable jump in map boss hit points between tier 10 and 11. Let me just have a look at the exact stats on that, because it's I'll share this in the chat that we've got here. I don't know if you can actually put it onto the screen for the people that are seeing it, but I'm just going to pick a specific map boss, which is Stone of the Currents from the Wharf map. And let me grab the image in question. You will see when you look at this chart, this is a chart of the hit points from POEDB. You'll see that there is a sharp change in the slope once you get from yellow tiers to red tiers. So between 77 and 78, it's not quite a doubling, but it's close to it. This boss, so this is just the Wharf boss, has 2.973 million hit points in tier 10. Tier 11 version has 4.727, so it's 60%. There's a 60% jump, whereas normally monsters jump 15%. So it's like there's an extra 3-tier gap in there, as well as that mods like FATED start having 25% more effect, I think, on map boss hit points. So there are a bunch of things that do make red maps meaningfully harder than yellow. I only learned this a couple of days ago, actually. I wish I had a logarithmic version of that chart would be better than what we've got there.
Oh, but then the high line wouldn't fit on it. That's the one for uniques, right? There's two of that. Oh, yeah, no, I would color it slightly differently. It's very, very similar in color.
Yeah, and that also shows why almost any build can kill trash mobs, and then you get to the boss, and you're like, what is going on? Well, it's because the boss has so many more hit points that it is actually ridiculous. A couple million DPS will kill trash incredibly efficiently, even in Delirious content. But are you going to be killing Kosis? No, not nearly as easily. You will still kill him. If you have a good build with actual defenses, you will kill Kosis fine with a couple mil DPS, but it's not going to be even remotely the same as killing a rare or killing a trash mob.
Yeah, or you can just outplay the mechanics in a protracted fight.
Yep.
Yeah. It's sort of, you can have it. I mean, this boss I looked up because I was doing a group encounter. Like, me and another player were just doing some testing. They wanted to showcase the way that they built around Flame Surge in the new league. And so I just wanted hard figures on how many hit points this boss had. And it turns out 2-player encounter, it's a 24 million hit point boss for a max tier Wharf map that's scoured. And so I was just watching their time to kill against 24 million hit points, and was thinking, what's my time to kill going to be on this guy? And it would probably have been, if I couldn't get a corpse explosion next to him, it probably would have been like 70 to 90 seconds or so. And I would have probably wanted to lure one of the boss's adds to him and then chaos explode it, because that would have one-shot the boss. But that was the thing that made me look into the hit points on the bosses and realize, oh yeah, there's a big jump between 10 and 11.
Wait, is it 10, 11? That's the jump. And then 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And this is 17? Yeah.
I think there is actually another jump around tier 18 or 19, but unfortunately the chart does not go that high.
Yeah, but that's also not map tiers that you usually farm.
Because I remember doing tier 19 maps before for base farming, and bosses felt noticeably tankier than if I dropped it down to 17.
I'm pretty sure it's tier 18 where that thing is, but that's just from like, I deleted a boss in half a second on 17, and then 18 it takes 6 seconds instead of half a second, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah,
I think the difference is the watchstones though that you're using, because the watchstones that you've got Terra is the cheapest one. Terra makes the bosses rippy. Then you've got Stalwart Defenders, which adds 40% monster life, 50% if you allocate the stone, the stones unhallowed or whatever it's called. And then you've got Misinformation, which obviously is the most expensive. You only use it on tier 19 strategies, but it adds 25% to the intensity of map mods, which is huge. Like, that's a huge amount of tankiness as well.
Yep. I was doing the full tier 19, and I definitely noticed the hit, but I never did 18, so I don't know if the jump was actually at 18 or 19. It was always that I was at either 17 or at full 19.
My belief is that the biggest difference is actually the decision to use Stalwart Defenders.
So The reason I don't think that's true is because I was doing base tier 15 maps. And so I moved around maps and I did tier 15's bases and tier 16 bases and tier 14 bases. And you could tell super, super quickly at a tier 18 map that it was suddenly like 4, 5, 6 times as strong, even though I still had all the same stones in.
All right, maybe you may well be right.
That is just also like, I didn't look it up. I don't have the data. It went from half a second, kill it as I run past, to stop at the map boss, wait 6 seconds for it to die, and then move. It was obviously a very expensive build at the time, right?
Yeah. I don't have the data either because I was playing an Archmage Bladefall Blade Blast build, and it was I have to cast Blade Blast once versus I have to cast it multiple times.
Yep.
Yeah, the last time I did tier 19 farming was 40% Delirious and was on a build that was very, very suboptimal for bossing. I remember the bosses taking a while, like 25, 30 seconds or so. But that's only 40% Delirious. It's the Delirium formula got worked out during last league, and there's a huge difference between 40, 60, 60 and 80, 80 and 100. Fun fact, if anyone cares, 96% of the level of Delirium is the amount of damage reduction the monsters have. So if it's 100% Delirious, they have 25 times base health.
What?
That tracks with my experiences hitting delirious monsters a lot.
Right, 80%. And they only have like 4.5 times base health.
RIP non-champion Fortify users.
The only stat that I knew was that at the end of Tropical Island, white mobs have more health than Shaper. If you do Delirium Mirror farming, like if you do Delirium Mirror farming, where you get, 300 splinters per map, by the time you get to the end of Tropical Island, apparently those white mobs have more health than Shaper. And that tracks, because if you don't have like 8 mil DPS, you can't kill them.
Yeah, the only time I did that, my build was so disgusting that I honestly didn't notice the health index. Yeah, I was self-poison KB. And then I was self-poison Bladefall, Blade Blast. And it's like, how much DPS do you have? Yes.
Yeah. To be fair, that's only with the Atlas passives. When they were in that zone, that was like last league. Like this league's Tropical Island would be easier because it's not in the right area. And Tropical Island is by far the best map for that. Like there isn't. It is the best map.
Especially with the divination card that's really good.
Yep. There were no Atlas passives when I did it. I did it in, I'd like to say, Heist League and then Ritual League. Heist League was the Poison KB with Replica Alberons, and then Ritual League was Poison Bladefall Blade Blast, because people kept telling me Assassin was squishy, so I made an Assassin that could laugh at fizz damage.
Nice.
Then it got nerfed into the ground.
Yeah. The multi-pronged nerf approach, something that's always discussed here. We already talked a little bit about defenses in terms of armor and evasion. Are there any other things that stand out to you here in terms of like what's incredibly strong in this meta? Because I wanna yoink some strats for the gauntlet. If I had to pick a gauntlet build right now, I'd probably go with something champion, maybe like an Exsanguinate Spellslinger.
I think that the physical trap archetype is the strongest build for a fresh start, and is one that can be built for hardcore.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, especially if you scale duration with it. Now, you might get really lucky and get a March of the Legion, in which case it's absolutely ridiculous. But even if you don't get a March of the Legion, the build is still nuts.
March of the Legion are the boots that allow you to switch on your auras for a limited amount of time without actually reserving things.
Yep.
Yeah, you reserve your mana for 500 milliseconds and you get, I think it's like 24 times that long that the aura is active by default, and you can extend the duration.
Yeah, and thanks to the changes made like 1 or 2 patches ago, you don't actually need mana in order to reserve mana.
And
No, you
that's
just
the
need
reason
it
my
available.
ability is bastardly good.
As long as it's available mana, it's fine.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
very
that
uncomfortable
was
build to use.
that was ridiculous. You guys, I'm pretty sure you all saw that, but like a couple of days ago, when people figured you can with Scourge mods reduce your total mana to 0, and then you could reserve an infinite amount of auras, dude. That was hotfixed so fast.
Yeah,
Yeah. That had to be
11
hotfixed fast. Like,
absolutely.
that was
That's
the sort of
another
thing
thing,
that would
though.
have
That
broken the league entirely if they didn't fix it.
yeah,
Like, if you would have a situation where all content that could be AFK'd, you would have some commercial pay-to-cheat site operation would be having 20 PCs that are doing it AFK with one person supervising them all, and that would just smash the league economy.
And
And that would happen quick.
by content that can be AFK, just to be clear for everyone watching, we mean things like Maven. We mean things like the Blight Ravaged maps. With this build, you could auto AFK basically everything in the game.
All the
Maven was a
simulacrums.
no because of the coil phase. But you could do Simulacrum, and Simulacrum's more important to the economy because it drops everything.
Yeah, simulacrum. Oof.
Yeah. And like you'd have the odd death, but who cares? Like you're in softcore, you have 6 portals.
Yeah, and you probably wouldn't even die until wave 20 plus anyway. And by wave 20, you've already gotten a ton of rewards.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how quickly it got shut down. If that had lasted a few days, I definitely would have played it. But it definitely needed to go, and I'm happy it did. But
I'm surprised.
it would have been fun to give it a go. That's all.
It was ingenious, absolutely, absolutely brilliant thing, and a person that made the build deserves to glory in their infamy from it, because it was just one of those things where you've just had this absolute stroke of genius in here's a way I can fundamentally break the game.
It gets a shackle of wretches out of 10. Or shackles of a wretched.
Yeah, on the one hand, I agree with that. On the other hand, it like lines up with the other things that I mentioned earlier, where I'm like, okay, I'm surprised that this made it past the design board and then even past alpha testing.
Well,
that took 3 weeks to come for people to become public knowledge.
Because probably most people didn't think that it was going to work and didn't bother trying it. That's what I'm saying.
More likely, most people who did it realized just how broken it was.
And didn't tell anyone.
I'm not going to do this. I'm going to just set my profile to private and go farm something. And those people, they probably have 10 plus mirrors each.
So here's just a thing that I've gotten in trouble from chat for saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. And it's just a little thought experiment, maybe, or like something to think about. Right? I'm not saying that they shouldn't have been nerfed. It absolutely should have been nerfed. Obviously bonkers. I'm not an idiot. But in the past, when you found something that broke the game to this level years ago, it would be a featured build that GGG would make a big post about and showcase and be like, look at this hilarious breaking of the game that this very clever individual has done. By the way, we're definitely nerfing this next league. But have fun and congrats on being very, very clever. And it was celebrated. And now, the correct move, if you find something that breaks the game like that and you're not a content creator, is to make your account private and tell fucking nobody. And I just don't know that I love that. Like, I don't know if there's a solution. I'm just saying I don't know that I love it. Whereas before, the correct move was show everyone, send it to GGG. They'll showcase it. You'll make a video about it. It was great. Not, quick, hide it before they delete my fun. I don't know if that's...
I wouldn't say that applies to everyone, like, or everything. Like, there were definitely things in the past, or like really long ago, where also people kept it secret for a long time how things work, just for their own personal profit.
Yeah, there were,
Yeah, like the clearest example of that was for those of you that did everyone here play during Essence League, or are people newer than that? Oh, well,
I started with the open beta.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I actually played in Essence League, but I followed the game.
Essence League was when Atlas of Worlds was first released, so it's kind of find out.
Well, for the benefit of chat anyway, because presumably a lot of people listening won't have played then. During Essence League, actually, even up to and including Essence League, this was possible. The information about how metamods worked was very, very, very little known. Metamods were very hard to unlock. You needed to do an enormous amount of grinding. It's nothing like what it is now, where it's just, even last league where it was just run the Pale Council. So the amount of grinding would be reasonably in line with delving to 600 to unlock one of the metamods. It was that sort of crazy degree of grinding. And so not many people knew how they worked. Additionally, they just had their cost reduced reasonably recently from 1 Eternal Orb to 2 Exalts. And there was a lot less currency in the economy, so 2 Exalts was a lot of currency to spend. So people didn't know how they worked. And there was a bunch of people who did know how they worked and who spread a bunch of misinformation on the Path of Exile Reddit about how they worked in order to stop people from trying things. And then in essence, that house of cards fell down. So that's the reason that Essence was the point where the Exalted Orb value in Chaos Orbs shot up from being like 60 Chaos to 120 consistently league after league after league, because more people knew how to use metamods effectively. And this is the thing where there were a couple of interactions that were really quite really could be quite ridiculous that just weren't known. So that was one example where a few people kept a secret to themselves. This stuff does happen, but with builds it's a bit harder because people love bragging about them. I think there's a line. There's a point where a build is ridiculously good but still fundamentally fair. It still works within the rules of the game. It's clearly overtuned. Forbidden Right Totems in 3.15. This is a skill that needed to be nerfed. This is not a skill that needed an emergency patch. Then there's ones that actively make the game worse by existing. And I would say that the 3.10 Herald build is a clear example of this. Like, I think that GG really, really shat the bed by not nerfing Purposeful Harbinger and Endbringer in the middle of the Delirium League. Like, in order to stop the meta where everyone that wasn't playing this broken build was locked out of the trade economy because the people who were playing the broken build could outpay them for everything that was rare. So I think it was a really good thing that they did this mid-league nerf, and I hope that it is a new precedent for things that are fundamentally broken. This is very different to things that are too good, like Forbidden Right Totems. It's when it's a judgment call for which, but I'd rather that they are more proactive with emergency nerfs when needed.
Yeah,
you get one.
I'm so against that.
Another good example of this, and I think this one's going to be a near and dear topic to Balor's heart. So, Winter Orb was insane in Synthesis League. It didn't get nerfed until the end of a league. Winter Orb with snapshotting was 10 times more insane because you could do it with a tabula of gear and then go clear tier 16 maps.
Tabula can clear tier 16, has always been able to clear tier 16. It's been squishy.
No,
at least when it's always. Winter Orb was introduced in 3.5. Yeah.
I'm saying, like, when it was snapshotting, what you could basically do is you could get a tabula and you could have your gear, you just hit level 68. You just hit maps. Yeah. And then you just go straight into tier 16s and you just clear everything. Because you essentially have a 15-link Winter Orb.
Like, I might not be able to kill a boss in under 90 seconds, but that's what I do when I get to tier 16 on a second character sometimes.
So here's the thing. Since playing hardcore, there's never been any reason why I would play all the way to level 100. I did that twice with the Herald build. Like, when it hit 100, I was like, oh, I'll just make another Scion and just put all my gear across. So first of all, fun is the most important part of the game, and that's the most fun I've had in a long time. Herald's OP, but very fun. So I don't it definitely needed to get nerfed. It absolutely needed to get destroyed. Like, absolutely. But waiting until the end of the league was absolutely the right choice. In fact, I'm going to go as far as to saying nerfing that they already did mid-league, that was also uncalled for. The amount of nerfing that they did to that build mid-league upset me to the point where it's taken a very long time for them to get my trust back after it. Because they've never nerfed stuff mid-league. You are supposed to, when you have something broken and fun, you are supposed to get away with it for the rest of that league. That has always been the way in the past. Now, it is not anymore. Now I know that if I find something broken and overpowered, it might get taken away. And that's a relatively bad feeling.
Wait, wasn't there one before that? When was Volatile Dead added? Because I think when Volatile Dead was added, the helmet enchant was insane, and that did instantly get nerfed during the league.
That did 3-1 Abyss.
3.1 Abyss League, yep.
I think the difference here is Balor was never playing the overpowered thing when it got nerfed. It has happened for a long time. Longer than 310.
I was playing that build when it got nerfed too, but it didn't. I'd just forgotten about that, actually, to be honest. So someone also pissed me off.
There's also a difference between nerfed and still the best build in the league, which happened with Volatile Dead, which happened with the Aura Stacker, and which happened with Winter Orb. They're all still the best build in the league after the nerf. And you mentioned fun's the most important thing. I would say, as a player, your job is to have as much fun as possible. As a game developer, your job is also to make sure that one player having fun does not ruin it for a massive number of other players.
Okay, but that's not how economy works.
Like, that's what happens when someone gets an overwhelming economic advantage, is that their ability to dominate the market, like ultimately the trade economy is real loss PvP, and giving someone what is effectively, it is not ethically equivalent to using a dupe cheat, but in terms of the advantage that it gives in the economy, having a build that can AFK complete content with zero skill investment is functionally equivalent to a dupe cheat. And as a result, I think this needs to be emergency patched out. If like meaningful endgame content, stuff that people aspire to getting to, ends up being devalued to nothing before they can get there. And that's what Harold did in 310. That's what this build would have done in 316.
What Harold actually did in that league, instead of that, is it made all other builds that weren't that incredibly easily accessible to all the people below that. It made everything that wasn't for Harold incredibly cheap, meaning your casual people got to play 10 times as many builds at 30 times the power they ever had before because of trickle-down economy. We were generating more scarabs. We were generating more of everything in the entire world and putting it all out into the economy for penance compared to any other league because we were drowning in them. And the only things that the 0.1% or whatever was interested in were things that directly affected that Harold build. So there's a little bit of feel bad for yes, casuals were 100% locked out of that Harold build if they didn't get into it immediately, right? Because those things were exorbitant prices. I was playing 80x per jewel. They were exorbitant prices. But everything else that wasn't that build became incredibly cheap. You could buy tons of stuff.
It became cheap against the Exalted Orb. But you got to think, for a casual player, what is their income? It's probably 20% pure Exalt drops with a huge variance. Obviously, casuals might get 10 Exalts a league. So if they get lucky, they'll get 15. If they get unlucky, they'll get 6. But someone that earns 50x a league is going to get something like 20% in pure Exalts, about 10% in pure Chaos, about 10% between Fusings and Jewelers, about 10% in 6 sockets, and then the rest is all going to be mixed stuff. Everything except, in the Delirium economy, everything except pure Exalted Orbs and pure Chaos Orbs was in the toilet, and that meant that they're getting 70% less loot. Because suddenly their Fusing Orbs are worth basically nothing because the Heralds are producing them. The essences that they're looting No, no one wants them. Like you can't sell them because there's someone playing a Herald build that's selling 75 of that essence at 3C each for the deafening. Like that was the thing that was going on, that goes on there, where like when you devalue everything except the Exalt, and the Exalt is the thing that, because of metamods ends up being the centerpiece of the economy. Like the top 0.5% of players, their demand for metamods is insatiable. So that ends up creating that situation where, I think anything that pushes the top, like either the top 0.1%, the top 0.01%, or the top 1% of players, if it widens their loot generation gap over the typical endgamer, let's just say someone that hits level 90 in a league, maybe gets 24 challenges. Those sorts of factors, I think, end up making the league economy worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's always been this idea, and it's usually brought up surrounding auction houses, of, everything's cheap, that's good for everyone. The problem is, if everything's cheap, the things that you find will have no value. And the things that do have value will insanely balloon in prices. Like Balor said, he was paying 80x a jewel, and he could pay that because he was playing an aura stacker. But if he was someone who did not have that already, he was never going to have that 80x, because all of a sudden he wouldn't get to build up the wealth, because the things he'd use to do it are worth pennies on the dollar, so to speak.
And so the problem is, look, before YouTube comments end up getting too upset at me, I had
upset at me, not you.
I had absolutely no expectation that Harold was going to last more than that league, right? Like it was very, very clear that was going to go away. It was very good, and I have absolutely no problem with that. It absolutely should have. I 100% agree with it. The only thing that I've got is just this little and it's the same with this, the manaless aura stacker this league. I understand that had to go, right? That's way too strong. It's just, I just have this there's just a growing habit of mid-league nerfs, and I really don't think that should be the standard. I think that should be the absolute exception, like only in the most extreme cases, which this manaless aura stacker was one that would deserve a mid-league nerf. But I think it should be reserved for the most extreme, brokenly abusable bullshit. Should be the stuff that gets mid-league nerfs. I think for the most part, you should feel safe that the build you're investing into or the thing you're deciding to do will remain for the rest of the current league. That's all. I think that should be the standard thing.
Last league, I would have been fine if FR Totems took a 20% nerf mid-league. I was playing it. But anyways, I think we should let's find something else, because this is one of those debates.
We're running into time.
Yeah, no, but it's a really interesting topic, and I do see both sides to the problem that everything becoming more available because a lot of people are pumping out a lot of stuff. But then at the same time, it's really hard to make currency. And I think that's something that people expressed to me in past leagues when that situation was happening, is that they feel that they don't have any way to gain economic leverage to actually get to the point where they can afford the things that they want to buy. And that's something that hasn't been expressed to that degree recently to me. I think everyone, even I myself in softcore trade, I do engage with trade really inefficiently. I don't even use the awakened trade macro and price things manually on the website and stuff like that. And I still feel like I'm consistently making progress towards things that I want to buy. Obviously, it could be better, but I don't feel like the drops that I'm getting are worthless. I don't feel like my rewards are not good enough to meaningfully keep up with the league inflation and stuff like that. I've definitely heard people feel like that.
Into the topic of chase items there, which was something we had listed as something to possibly talk about, the Mage Bloods and the like of this league.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't seen much outside of the Mage Blood from people. I haven't seen or heard much about the other chase items. What are there? There's the Blight Amulet that can be anointed 4 times.
The other amulet that's like an extra support gem on your chest.
That's the Ornithol,
yeah.
And
that's
the Squire.
80x or something. And the Squire, right.
Also 90, which makes your spiders real good.
And there's the Stasis Prison, which is like a mirror or so.
Yep. 1.5 mirrors last I saw, actually.
Okay, yeah.
I almost forgot about that one.
So did I. It only came up in discussion yesterday.
It's one of those weird ones where it's kind of unassuming, and I don't think it's fair to say it's the strongest, but it's definitely not the weakest, and it's one of the most universal.
It's just the most powerful defensive item that's ever existed in the game, other than things that are actually genuinely broken.
Are you counting Mage Blood as a thing that's genuinely broken? Because
I'm talking about the Stasis Prison here.
Yeah, I just mean that is also on the same tier as it, and I would argue eclipses it.
Oh, defensively, yeah, of course. Mage Blood can be used defensively.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. It's the second best defensive item in the game, then.
Yes. It is still very, very good. I'm not trying to argue that.
What are we talking about? The stasis? What?
Yes,
Stasis Prison, unique carnal armor.
Right.
Domain of, like, the unrelenting domain of timeless conflict.
It basically says if you don't get one shot, you will never die.
Things
busted. Almost. Yeah.
Well, it rolls up to 100, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is recoup over 4 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
So
that's
it's like you should just think of it as being 25% of your life as regeneration on top of the debuff immunity as well. Like it's
Yeah, but also doesn't recoup is recovery, so it does scale with increased recovery rate, right?
No,
it doesn't.
Recoup is not recovery.
That's the question I have.
Yes, recoup is recovery.
Is it?
Okay.
Yes,
the word
that's what I'm thinking. It is recovery
that has a duration is recovery. So your flask is recovery.
Yeah, gain on block is not recovery because I mean it is recovery, but it doesn't get affected by recovery rate because it's not over time.
Test.
Wait, why is my Google so scarred?
I definitely want to know how to test this, or if someone's already done the testing on this, because I believe recoup should not count as recovery.
I would guess
it does recover things over time. So
here's how to test it. The way to test it would be to use Forbidden Rite in a 0 regen map.
Yep.
To self-damage yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And see how much. Allocate the 3 witch nodes for recoup and see what happens.
Yeah. I will have to run a proper test on that on stream to figure it out. But I was sure that recoup should not count as recovery.
I'm not going to pretend to know.
But yeah, that was just an assumption that I made. Like, I don't have to. If anyone in chat or in comments knows of someone who's actually done the testing already, please mention it to us somewhere. Otherwise, I will do that testing because now I need to know.
So are these chase items working in terms of, like, are they making you feel incentivized to run the content that they drop from if they're tied to content? Or if they are not tied to content like Mage Blood, are they encouraging you to seek out increased sources of unique item drops or not?
It's making me want to make more money.
That would be the other option. Do these items existing motivate you to make enough money to buy them?
At the moment, no, but that's mostly just because I keep ending up playing builds that don't play nicely with them, even if they are generically insanely powerful. And if my build played nicer with them, I would be more motivated to do it. But also, I think
you go.
One very important thing in terms of chasing by doing specific content is this league, the existence of Scourge maps very much disincentivizes me from that. Because why would I do Blight Ravaged maps when I can get more money by running white maps and running the Scourge maps? Why would I, do Flawless Breachstones when I could instead just do Scourge maps because I know I will get the item faster doing that instead of just gambling?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the top min-max approach to them. is just find the most efficient way to make currency, then buy them off the trade market. Especially with Mage Blood, like there's people that get it just as a lucky drop and are quite happy to sell it for more currency, you know, for a headhunter plus more currency than they've ever had before.
Yep.
How much? I haven't looked. How much are Mage Bloods going for? They're more than a mirror, right?
They're about
They're
2
like
mirrors.
2 mirrors. Yeah.
Ow.
Price is unstable on them too. Like there's a lot of attempts to price fix them.
Is there? Yeah, I know that price
much.
fixing is always an issue. QE. But I
Yeah.
wonder whether single people or groups have enough currency to really buy out the Mage Blood market.
There's a group that is price fixing it, but that doesn't mean it's unbuyable because they're too expensive for that group to buy every single one of. So they are still moving.
I would say that all speculation and rumors aside, the value of Mage Blood is probably going to rise to between 2 and 3 mirrors consistently, unless we see a major shift in the drop rate. And I think that every league going forwards, unless we start seeing div cards, Mage Blood will be 2 to 3 mirrors every league. It'll start relatively cheap. It'll start around 1 mirror. And as time goes on, it's just going to go up, 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 and it will end at whatever the standard price is. I don't think it's the sort of item that there is really a way to control right now. And that's why, if you look at it, even despite claims of price fixing, I mean, there's a couple of people not selling their items, but they're not controlling the price in any meaningful way.
Yeah, I think that Mage Blood, it's also going to pull up the price of a bunch of all of the indirect sources of it. So the RNG sources that we could think of when we were discussing this the other day were the divination card, the Wretched. There's the beast that generates a random beast. There is the beast that generates a random unique belt. There is the Mythic Orb, and there is the Ancient Orb. These are the 4 that come to mind.
Quick note, I don't think it is ever right to use the Mythic Orb for a Mage Blood because the Mage Blood has a 2 to 4 roll and you cannot divine it.
Yeah, that is partially true.
So
it may still be the best use of a Mythic Orb because you compare it to, say, okay, if you use a Mythic Orb on a leather belt and you hit a Headhunter, then you get a certain amount of value from that. If you use a Mythic Orb on a heavy belt and you hit a Mage Blood, then if you hit 2, you can probably trade it for a Headhunter. If you hit 3, you can trade it for 2 Headhunters. And if you hit 4, then you can sell it for a couple of mirrors.
Couple of Headhunters.
So, well, no, a lot more. Like, so on that basis, I think even if the 2 was a miss, like even if the 2 was only able to sell for half a Headhunter, it would be objectively right, assuming a same outcome chance, to get a Headhunter and getting a Mage Blood, it would be correct to use it on the heavy belt rather than the leather belt. So we don't know for certain that Headhunter and Mage Blood are the same rarity. I suspect they are, but I've done a whole bunch of speculation, and I think that it's 1 in 1490 to get a Mage Blood when you get a random unique belt. But I'm not sure I'm right on that. But if that's correct, then all of those sources we were talking about, like Ancient Orbs and the like, are underpriced. And badly underpriced.
So in terms of a Mythic Orb, my counterpoint would be there's a lot of other things that you can use it on, like a Shaper Call of the Brotherhood, which will give you a far higher return for a far lower risk because you don't have nearly as many brick states and it's a much more common base.
So I suspect that you are 9 times as likely to hit Call of the Brotherhood as you are to hit Mage Blood. I'm not certain I'm right on that. But if you hit a Shaper 2-stone ring, then, if you hit enough Shaper 2-stone rings to hit 9 Call of the Brotherhoods, your expected value would be 1 Mage Blood. What's a Shaper Call of the Brotherhood worth?
40x last I saw.
Yeah, okay, you're right then. You're right. That is the better use for them. So forget the Mythic Orb then.
Well,
and that's not the only item. There's several other, especially influenced uniques, usually Shaper because of Eternity Shroud, that do have insanely high payouts and much lower risks.
Yeah, if they're lower rarity tiers, yeah, I think you're right on that. For that matter, scale chancing of Shaper Call of the Brotherhoods is probably worth it now. Of 40x.
Not worth it for your hands.
Yeah.
That's true.
Quick
just do it
sidetrack.
slowly, though.
Quick sidetrack. We already talked about the mechanic going core. How do you feel about the tainted currency going core? Because we don't know whether it's going to go core. But do you think that would be a good addition? Because with the Scourge mechanic, I personally, I didn't get to say anything about it, but like, I do agree with the points being made, and I personally think it's too convoluted. Like, too many lines of explicit, implicit, Scourge mods, all these different things. I don't think it would be great to have it in core. But some of the currency would be nice to have, but I don't know whether it would be wise to add it to the game.
I think that if they don't add, like, you think the way that top 0.25% of players reacted to the removal of Harvest, like, mostly it was very, very, very negative, stir the pitchforks, because suddenly they were losing 50 passive points of power. You know, going from having perfect items to have it in every slot to having...
I blame the majority of the backlash for the Harvest removal on GGG bringing Harvest back unnerved and giving a sign to the community that, hey, this is okay, this will work in the game. Because when it went away, when it didn't go core immediately, no one was super upset that it was gone, because everyone knew, okay, it was just a one-off league. And we got our fun, we had our fun. But then when it came back unadjusted, and then afterwards they nerfed it into the ground, that really, really fanned the flames.
But leave that aside, like, the effect of removing the tainted currency next league will be a nerf of, no, not that much power, but about half that effect, but it will affect a different group of players, and it will affect the people who their sort of, the end of their league's progress is Eternal Labyrinth. That sort of section of the casual player base will go from having access to a 6 link on day 3 to not having a 6 link until week 4. And that's going to be a huge change for those players, and I don't think they're going to like it very much. That's going to be what's going to happen if the tainted currency doesn't go core. I personally be fine. I'll recover. You know, I can generate the currency to make myself a 6 link fine. 6 link of whatever unique I want. But for that section of the player base, it'll be a huge drop in power. They'll be down a support gem for their entire first month as a result.
Well, or they could just buy a cheap 6. Not like 6 links are super expensive, especially not in softcore trade. In the first couple of days, you could get a corrupted 6 link or whatever. Just not make your own 6 link on that specific item that you want.
Yeah, not on a unique that you want. I don't know. I think that there'll be a backlash to that if it doesn't go core, and I think GGG are probably pretty conscious of that and might make it go core for that reason. It's not a change that's going to affect me that much, because, as I say, I can get 1,000 fusings.
It is a disgusting amount of power creep in terms of, like you said, 6 link acquisition early on, especially, but it's something that's going to go away with PoE 2 anyway, somewhere in the next 2-3 years, because the socket system will be largely revamped. Yeah. So I'd be fine with it either way, I guess.
So I think we have to separate the tainted currencies and the effect of having a 6 link. I suspect that more future leagues, if not all future leagues, will have easy sources of 6 links.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think the tainted currencies will go core, and I don't even think they're necessarily the best implementation of this. Now, there are some that are very interesting, like the tainted mythic orb. It's a cool item, and I would certainly like to see it drop in the future. Maybe the way we saw some Harbinger currency added to the core drop pool, we could see that added. I also think that the tainted teardrop is super, super interesting, but maybe not as relevant because it kind of occupies the same place as Eternal Orbs, where if you measure your purchases in mirrors, you will know a lot about it, and otherwise, you probably don't know what I just said.
Yep. Yeah, the teardrop is busted. It's like, it's not being talked about much, but it is so strong.
How much do they go for currently?
Not enough.
Not enough?
They're really unstable prices. 0.4x last I looked.
Yeah, they're unstable because occasionally someone buys a bunch of them and completely wrecks the market for a crafting project.
And if you are a standard player, if you're in League, but your primary motivation in League is acquiring currency for standard, you should be buying 1,000 Divine Teardrops before the end of the league.
Yep.
Oh yeah, for standard.
if you're thinking about standard here, Mage Blood right now is about 4,000x. 1,000 teardrops could easily be 10 times that if they don't go core.
Yeah. Speaking of tainted currency, tainted chaos, does that come from a chaos recipe with scourged items, or am I?
It's just a drop.
Just a drop.
I've seen 0 of them.
Yeah, they're incredibly rare for how lowly valued.
How many do I have? I definitely haven't used any.
I sold at least 10 of them before. I don't know how many I have now.
So how many
Apparently I
tainted
have
armor
two.
scraps do you have in your stash? Assuming you haven't used many of them.
That would be assuming too much.
150.
You
I
have
have 2 chaos and 150 armor scraps.
There you go. That's the rarity. So bizarre.
I do definitely think that the Tainted Blessing could go core. Like, even if like the entire league is scrapped as a one-off thing and nothing goes core, I think Tainted Blessing would be a great addition to the base game. Because it does hurt that there's now so many things that you need to do to an item before you do that final step of corrupting it. Or like so many things that would brick the item if you haven't done them before landing a good corruption, or if it drops corrupted. That I think it would not hurt to have the ability to add an extra premium price, right? Tainted Blessings are, I don't know how much they are, but like, yeah, just to be able to put enchants on corrupted items, similar to how we can put annoyance on corrupted amulets. Oh, that, by the way, I missed the train so hard on that, dude. For my corrupted amulet with +1 curse, I wanted to buy a Tainted Blessing, and I checked them early on in the league. I was like, oh yeah, easy, 35C. And then they went up like insanely. Tainted oils, I mean, not Tainted Blessings. And Tainted oils are now, what, 80, 90 chaos at least?
121.
So painful. And now if I think about like how much would I have made if I invested all my currency into the Tainted oils early on and then sold them later for profit. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind for future leagues. I'm just very, very new to the software trade economy, and so I don't have a feeling at all for what is cheap early and what is more expensive later. Like, what are the good things to dump your money in? Besides exalts, but everyone knows exalts. So early on in the league, you have this huge exalt investment bubble where like exalt values aren't actually as high as they are. They're only that high because so many people want to buy them in order to bank on them while they go up in value. So it's really awkward sometimes.
If ever in doubt, buy
behave.
Tempering Orbs. Buy Tempering Orbs if you're ever in doubt, because they explode in price over a league, because they are something that is never worth using unless the item you're using it on is worth at least 200 exalts.
All right.
Yep. Or if there's a vols that you really, really, really want to increase the mana modifiers on. The price spiked there and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
A tempered orb? Am I stupid?
Heist currency.
Heist enchant for weapons.
Oh, that
Weapons.
one.
Oh,
Right.
Tailoring. I was thinking of
is
tailoring, not temporary.
the armor version, yeah. They're,
No.
like, they're solid too.
Yeah.
But it used to be mirror pieces as well, but people have caught on that they rise against the exalt. So like you were saying, there's an exalt bubble. Now all of the mirror pieces people have learned, so they're not worth it as much anymore.
Also, House of Mirrors cards tend to be a pretty good investment because people love blowing them up in gambles. And so House of Mirrors at one point was worth 40% of a mirror per card.
Fucking what?
That's the content creator effect.
Yes, for a short time.
Okay.
It was
That's
a bubble. I
ridiculous.
don't know if it even showed up on Pewee Ninja as a blip. It was very short, but for a short time, you could sell a House of Mirrors for 40% of a mirror. It was absurd.
Wait, that means the entire set is what, 9 or 11?
9.
9.
Wow, so that's like 9 times 4 is 360. That would be almost 4 mirrors for an entire set.
Yeah, but it's because people want to create them like in order to double or nothing them on stream to generate excitement for stream for their stream. And
you saved up 15 of them and you want to do 15 in a row, and then your friend do their 15 in a row. So now you've got 30 big gambles to make views, right?
Like, I've done this on a small scale just by buying the high variance div cards in the past. Like, I bought out all of the, what's the one for a 2 implicit synthesized string? Broken Promises, I think it's called. No one actually knows where it drops yet. I bought a couple of dozen sets of that to turn them in for a YouTube video. And, like, that's just something that I did at the end of the league because I had currency to burn.
And any good rings?
I got one that was 6% strength and 10% damage, I think. 6% strength being the main mod. But yeah.
Not horrible.
Any onslaught on hit?
Nothing, no jackpots. But I got something that was worth about the entire price I paid for the rings in that league economy. It didn't sell in the league, but
all right.
Yeah, I tend to avoid all those high variance gamble things because it's such a waste of money.
I don't do them because I've never win ever.
The thing is, at the moment, I think it's positive EV to do the Wretched. If you can get a set of the Wretched for 18C, and if you turn it in, and whatever you get, if it is not Mage Blood, you destroy it. Just doing that, you should end up positive on currency. Long term, at least with my speculation of exactly how drop rates work in this game. Now, I could be
as long as you open enough of them to eventually get a Mage Blood. Not if you stop at like exactly. 20 sets or so.
We're talking EV here. We're not talking about your chance of ruin. But from an EV perspective, it should be positive. And it may even still be positive if the Wretched card raises to, if it raises to 4 sets to the Exalt. So if it's 24 cards to the Exalt, it still should be positive EV. And you'll get Headhunters as well sometimes.
If it becomes 24 cards to an Exalt, I'm going back to Tower.
Oh, yeah. Cause the drop there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes,
it drops the Tower.
All right.
If it becomes that expensive, I just live in Tower now. And I won't open any of them, by the way. I would just sell them. I'm not doing the gamble thing.
I seriously, the videos, just as video creation for your channel, it's worth it for that reason, to be honest.
Isn't that kind of RMT almost?
No, because I didn't give it to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, true. It's not happening between people. But you're still you're investing in-game currency for real life value. But it
is a really strange effect on the league economy. Like the content creator effect is real.
Very weird stuff.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of ground, and time flies when you're having fun. We're already almost 3 hours into the podcast, and I think it would be wise if we round off things here. But I think we want to quickly go over a closing round. Well, Sirgog suggested that we reintroduce the question of what are your main gripes with the current state of the game, and I think that would be great to round things off for the discussion. And then afterwards, we'll quickly talk about ambitions, projects, and hopes, and the likes of stuff, what we still have planned for the league, what people can expect from us. But yeah, should we just do a round of that? I think Sirgog has a very well laid out response to his own question. So do you want to quickly tell us what are your gripes with the game? What do you think currently could be easily addressed and make the game much better?
Yeah, so I picked up, I thought 3 minor gripes I've got that just sort of infuriate me constantly in the game. The first one is just the way that bad faith trading is like the best get rich quick strategy in Trade League. This is things like price manipulation through dishonesty. It's things like listing a whole bunch of items that you've got no intention to sell at prices you've got no intention to sell them, and also things like dump tab price checking and stuff like that. This is one of those things that's infuriating because it means that if your only interaction with other players is in a trade environment, you hate other players in this game. And it creates this level of toxicity in the community. Whenever I interact with players through group play, and I often just join a pickup group or start one just for something to do. You often have really positive experiences with other players, but when you're trading, you don't. So that's the first thing, is just bad faith trading in general. And I would like to see GGG actively work to stamp out the price fixing shenanigans, like the people that list an item with no intention of selling it. Like, this conduct in IRL is actually criminal fraud. If you post something on eBay with no intention of selling it, just in order to manipulate prices down, there's people in the US that went to jail for doing that with art auctions in the 80s. There's a high-profile case there. So, like, this conduct in the real world is actually serious scamming. It's not like something trivial. So I think that that's something that would be good to see GGG actively stamp out. And it would probably allay a lot of the concerns people have about the absence of an auction house. Second thing is the 5-way map device being an essential upgrade that's gated behind collecting 400 splinters. Like 400 splinters from Legion content. And the third one is the lack of death feedback, unless you go to the extent of frame-by-frame analysis of recorded gameplay. I really think that the game should track the last 3 savage hits your character has suffered. If you die, it should give you the list of the last 3 savage hits you suffered, what monster caused them, what the attack was, how much damage it did, how much you mitigated it, and how long before your death it was. So you'd see, all right, you died to a savage hit 270 milliseconds before death that chunked you from 100% to 20% and inflicted an ignite. Then before that, 6 seconds before that, you were savage hit by something else. You then have to analyze that and say, oh, the one 6 seconds ago didn't matter. It was all this one 270 milliseconds before I died. That'd be a huge improvement over, frame by frame analysis of gameplay, because unless you've got a beast of a computer, you can't do that. So that's my 3 gripes.
That's fair. I'm just gonna not say anything. I have like a response to at least the 2 last points, but I don't want to stretch the time limits too much. Thank you. Do you have any gripes that you want to mention here?
Scourge. It should not have gone live as a league. It should have been delayed by at least 2 weeks, and they needed to fix more things. It's in a completely terrible state. This is the most bugged league we've had since Synthesis, and I really don't have very much faith that the next league is going to be any better when we're trying to do more ambitious things. It's really bad for the game because people will play for a week. They'll say, well, everything's broken. Why am I continuing? It's really bad for the most engaged players because there are things you cannot do because it's literally broken or non-functional or doesn't work in the way that it should. And it's just overall a needlessly frustrating experience.
This is the most fun gameplay I've had in the league in a while. Not reward structure, just gameplay. I very, very much like the gameplay.
It's a pure blasting league.
My favorite league to play.
Yep.
Nothing frustrating about it, just the reward structure.
Mm.
Plenty of complaints about crangled items. None about playing the game. Super fun.
Wait, no minor gripes about the base game or anything that you want to bring up?
Nah, I love everything. All of my complaints are about the reward structure, specifically the items.
Okay.
All the complaints I have are Scourge maps are too rewarding at low tier, not rewarding enough at high tier, or at least actually they are rewarding enough at high tier, but not comparatively because tier 1s are the same, right? It should be that good at 16, pretty average at 1, and Scourged items are shit, crangled items are shit, pre-crangled items on the floor are garbage, all of those. But the gameplay? Love the gameplay. 2 different sides to the same coin. One I hate, one I love.
Okay, no, that's a fair response. I'll let that count. So for me is one big topic that also was suggested by Sirgog that we talked a lot about beforehand was the availability of information in regards to how things work in Path of Exile with the current wiki situation where a lot of the stuff that is on there is outdated and is not really fact-checked by people who have access to the in-game information. The most precise information that we have about the game is usually numerical nature, and that's the data mine stuff on PoEDB. But like even very simple things are are not explained in game, and that ties into another issue that I probably want to put that into one point: the discrepancy between the availability of even basic information and at the same time the degree to which like really basic explanations and tutorial systems are forced upon even experienced players. Like me having to switch off things, dealing with pop-ups when I already switched off pop-ups and everything does annoy me to a not insignificant degree. And at the same time, the stuff that the game does in order to explain stuff to players is not enough for new players to rely on the game itself, to be able to learn the game without any external resources. Maybe that's also a little bit too high of a goal, but the amount of taking the player by the hand and explaining to them how the game is, like how the game works and how it's supposed to be played is really low. And that's a double-edged sword, because obviously it's really good for content creators that they're able to thrive with explaining the game to people, because people rely on content creators to explain the game to them. But going forward, I hope that's something that's being addressed in PoE 2.0, that as an experienced player, I can go and switch off everything and just play the game without getting pop-ups and this and that shoved into my face. And at the same time, people who are completely new can just play the game without a stream in the background, without watching YouTube videos, and just play it for like 20 hours and learn a lot more than they currently do. Hope that's something where we move.
You really agree with that? The new wiki that's being set up, because a lot of the people that have in the past modified the original Path of Exile wiki just got sick of it after it was bought out, and so they ended up just losing interest in the project. But there's a new wiki, poewiki.net, that's been set up as a competitor to the existing one that is far better from a feature perspective. It's actually the best place to get, if you already know the very basics of Path of Exile, like if you've played through to Act 10 and you want to then find out how a mechanic you know nothing about works, like say you've never played an Ignite build, you want to learn the basics of Ignite, poewiki.net is the place to go for that. You know, as a first spring point to other things. But unfortunately, the old fandom-owned wiki ends up coming up top of Google searches, and it's now about 3 leagues out of date, a lot of the information on it, which is really...
Shit, some of it's 3 years out of date.
So just to clarify here, the new wiki is just as out of date in a lot of cases because they pulled information from the same source as the old wiki.
The things that are egregious are getting fixed. Like, you know, when something that's wrong gets noticed, it's getting fixed. And so you'll find things like divination card drop locations. The new wiki will list something like the Scout. At least I expect it would. I haven't checked this before this video. The new wiki will say the Scout is a tropical island zone drop, whereas the fandom one will just have will have no information on drop location.
The important part is there's an actual group of people working on that one that are actively updating things, whereas that's not really happening on the old fandom side.
Correct, yeah. I'm just checking that on the Scout. Hang on, no, that's come up with the prophecy when I search for it. There is a...
Yep, it's not on there because it's the same problem. And the Brass Dome is not updated, Fire Trap is not updated. I tried to use the new wiki. I gave up after the first 3 things I searched were not on it. It is as out of date, I'm going to just stick to PoEDB.
That is unlucky to have that many. Like, I mean, that is the first one I've found that's been out of date. But then again, I haven't looked up Brass Dome because I remember it from the patch notes.
I looked it up to see the roles, and it was the old Brass Dome, not the new one.
Yep.
Rip.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'd looked up Fire Trap to see the new base damage, and it was the old base damage for Fire Trap, not the new one. Yep. And then I went to PoEDB, I got all the info I wanted, and yeah, I'm still not going to use the wikis.
PoEDB is the best place if you're looking for purely for information of a purely numerical basis, and if you know how to navigate it. It's like,
PoEDB's only downside is it's super unintuitive to use. Its user interface or UX or whatever the hell it's called is very bad. But if you can get around it, it's got all the right information all the time. It's really good.
Yeah, and I mean that gripe is so heavy that it weighs enough for 3 gripes. I had like 2 other things that I wanted to say, but honestly, over that conversation, I forgot them. Maybe I could mention that like I think the community is too much focused on the really top end, but that's always like with games where people want to get the best outcomes, farm the best strategies, farm the highest amount of exalts, get the best items and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that is not in the center of the public's interest that would still be really cool. Like a lot of things, I don't know, like SSF item acquisition methods and stuff like that. That's just very, very niche knowledge because the majority of the players focus on the top end of SC trade economies. But that's something that I don't think that the developers can change, right? That's just something with the community. Similar with the economy stuff that you talked about. It's to a large part, it's people taking advantage of the system or like doing whatever people do. Like it's just mass dynamics, right?
Sorry for interrupting. I was just reminded of something actually that the developers could do to fix the wiki situation.
Oh,
the way the RuneScape wiki works is if an event has been triggered a certain number of times, so a certain number of people have gotten an item as a drop, there's an official API that makes the drop rate public. And even if TGG doesn't want to make drop rates public, they could make drop sources public, and that would then update automatically, so things wouldn't become as out of date.
That's genius, yeah. Like just have it, even just the drop location would be ideal. You know, once it's dropped naturally 25 times.
I think it's 100 on RuneScapes, but I could be wrong about that number.
That would actually also be really cool. Yeah. I remember I played this online browser-based, like text-based browser game, and on the login page, they have like real-time events popping up on the, like it's called Porn City for anyone who's interested in it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend playing it, but it was fun for a while, 10 years ago. But what I'm trying to say is like on the start page, they have the overview of the city and you see like random things pop up like XX, this or that name just attacked this person and left them lying in the dirt, or someone just randomly found this or that item in the streets or stuff like that. If you had that on PoE, like random events popping up of like, you know, this or that person just found a headhunter in a terrace map or whatever, right? That would be cool. Yeah. Although you'd have to opt in because some people don't want other people to know when they find certain.
Trade shark alert. You would have bots that would be set up to whisper everyone that had a headhunter drop, a mirror drop, and even exalt drops.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't have to be like every single thing gets announced. It's just like something fun that they could do to make to have a more immediate sort of feeling of missing out when people are looking at the page of the game because they're like, oh, so many things are happening and I'm not playing right now, right? Let me download and install or let me start the game up.
Just anonymize it. And it'll be fine.
Yeah, or let people opt in and out of anonymization. Like, you know, some people may be fine with it.
The thing is, people will opt in because they're like, "Oh wow, I can have my name in lights," and then other people go, "All right, I'm just going to run an auto hotkey script and just insta message whatever name pops up in that box with the item with a price like, hi, I want to buy your headhunter. Is 50 chaos okay?"
yeah, that's exactly what you would do. Like, you need to think like a bad actor with something like that. Yep. If it's anonymized, though, it'd be fine. Or if you said a player on the Australia realm, a player on the Brazil realm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gateway.
Yeah, always with
Gateway would be right.
Really, when adding any trade feature or player interaction feature, you always have to design it from a perspective of what will bad actors do with this tool.
Yes. Yep.
True. All right.
Yeah.
What will you actors do with the remaining couple of weeks in the league before we round things off completely?
Well, let's be a bad actor, steal all of Catmaster's loot and vial it all. Now, more seriously, I'm continuing to play the 5-baller I started with, but I also have a Raider that's sort of sitting in Act 9 at the moment. We'll finish that the next time I start playing it. And I just want to finish all the core content and then come up with some stupid projects after that.
Like slippery gym levels of stupid, or more or less?
So I wanted to play around with, we were talking about heist unique bases before. I've wanted to play around with pneumatic daggers for a long time. They're the dagger that grants all of your elemental hit damage, elemental weapon attack damage from that dagger has the ability to poison as though it was physical or chaos. And alongside middle tier endgame weapon stats. I've been wanting to play around with that base for a while, so I might try to make something hipster with that is still capable of doing the feared.
That sounds really interesting. I'll be curious to see how that unfolds. How about your projects, Tenkiei? You're still motivated to do another build or two, right?
I'll have to see how things go. Usually my motivation dies whenever the economy dies for a league. So right now people are still buying the failed crafts for 10 and 20x, so it's going well. And I'm pushing my current character, which is coming along decently. Still have to fix a couple problems. I now have a very deep understanding of just how flawed strike skills are, because I can't find a single one that performs well in every map. They're all layout dependent.
Yeah.
Luckily, if you're willing to switch between Molten Strike and Lightning Strike, you can cover everything. It just means you have to have 2 gems, a build that's compatible with both, and a white socket on your chest piece.
Smite. Smite does everything.
You're going to make a Smite build, Balor? That's your project for the rest of the league?
I don't play melee builds.
I mean, Lightning Strike's not really melee. Proc Shield is my worst enemy.
True.
Oh, yeah.
But like in general, you could add 3 zeros to the end of a melee skill or a strike skill's DPS. You could add 4 zeros. I still wouldn't want to play it.
I'm talking about screens of coverage, not DPS.
Yeah, it just like Lightning Strike is maybe an exception because it's not really like that's basically like, you know, that's a projectile scaling is what that is. But like melee, I don't play melee skills. I have no idea what I'm going to do with the rest of the league except keep making builds. I would like to get a Mage Blood and play with that. It looks OP. But I have never settled into an actual farming strategy or played as the same character for more than like 2 days. I keep re-rolling. So I haven't made any money yet, and I'm the most broke I've ever been, but also having a ton of fun. I just keep wanting to set up new characters.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I keep thinking about should I go for a Mage Blood, but then my first build, I really wanted cooldown recovery on my belt, and that's the one thing Mage Blood can't give you. And now I'm playing a strength stacker, and it's on one hand, Mage Blood's still really good, but on the other hand, I'm very greedy, and I don't know if I can make up the attributes I need without the belt. So I'm not sure yet.
22 strength on it.
It does.
Yes, that is true, but I have about 100 on my current one.
I know.
Plus percent.
Damn.
And I also think I'd lose my int and my dex once I swap my amulet if I don't have percent on my belt. It gets complicated.
Should implement a flask that gives you strength during flask effect.
Oh, if it did that, Mage Blood 100%.
Nah, it won't work with item requirements and stuff. Like,
yeah, and also, could you imagine the amount of people that would press their flasks in a map, then level up the gems on the side, and then just have them unequip the gear as soon as the flask falls off?
It was a really silly suggestion. I didn't think about it.
It's like breach rings, but
do it,
worse.
Yeah.
Gosh.
As for myself, I'll quickly do a couple more upgrades to the Armor Brand Ignite build. I'm not switching out of Martyr of Innocence, so I'm probably going to crangle a bunch more Martyrs of Innocence, hoping for that glorious tier 3 Scourge outcome with increased fire damage and fire dot multi and like no good downside or no bad downside, like minus fire res or something like that would be completely opiumable. But yeah, other than that, probably for softcore, I'm done. I don't want to do too much softcore trade because I'm afraid I'll lose my ability to play hardcore seriously. But I do want to make like a currency farmer devs off because I've never played devs off in Trade League. It's always been HC SSF, so the options or the capabilities of the build are very limited if you do it in an SSF setting. But if you have access to the All's Amulet for a free Malevolence reservation and all kinds of trade shenanigans, I think you can make it really well. Balor has a guide on it, like from last league, that I'm probably gonna check. And then I really need to get started on Gauntlet practice. That's why I asked earlier what you guys think is strong, because I don't want to play the Fist Trapper. I think the top people are gonna be playing the Fist Trapper. I want to do something that I could do at my own pace and still outlive other people, but it's probably going to be something champion. I don't know whether Impale Spectral Helix or Toxic Rain, Chaos Dot, or the thing I thought about is Fizz Dot, like Sand Grenade Slinger on champion, but I'll have to work out the different options that I have. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing.
Champions and Sabos will be dominant in Gauntlet, so if you're wanting to not be again, if it's a class Gauntlet again, you're going to want to be a different. You want to be a different base class.
Yeah. I just don't. I don't think I don't know. I don't think I want to play anything outside of champion. I don't know. We'll see.
Inquisitor's super tanky.
True.
Yeah.
But Inquisitor requires gear to set that up.
Inquisitor, could you?
I wonder if you could do Guardian Herald of Agony with determination scaling without much gear.
Lots to think on.
That's a great topic for the post-podcast discussion. Well, guys, we're really over time. I have to quickly tell everyone that you guys should absolutely, definitely go and subscribe to Tenkiei and Sirgog on YouTube, and of course also to BalorMage. And if you want to watch the podcast in full, also to my YouTube, the podcast is uploaded in full there, and will also be available on all the podcast platforms where you get the podcast goodness for commuting in your car or for workout or whatever. I'll link that in the chat quickly, the link tree for the different sources. And I also linked Sirgog's and Tenkei's and BalorMage's YouTube channels in chat. I'll do that once again, just to make sure that you guys don't miss out on these people, because I always learn a great deal when I watch their videos. So, wouldn't want you guys to miss out on that. And other than that, we don't have the next episode planned out yet. It will be announced sometime next week, as soon as I figured out whether it's going to be next weekend or the weekend after that. But we're definitely not done with FATED podcast episodes for this league. There's definitely more to come. And I mean, there's so many things that we could have still discussed if we didn't run into that hard time limitation. Like, we had a lot prepped. But it's always good, I feel, to end on a high note when we're all participants, all the audience is still like looking forward to more discussion, and then just keep that hype for the next episode. So with that said, I want to thank Sirgog and Tenkiei and of course BalorMage for coming on. Guys, clap and chat for those amazing people. And
thanks for having me.
Better luck next time.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thanks for coming on. That was
fantastic.
great.